Ethan Reed stood in the marble lobby of Hamilton and Cross law offices, his work boots leaving faint dirt marks on imported tile worth more than his monthly rent. Across from him sat his ex-wife Brooke, draped in designer confidence and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. She slid a custody petition across the mahogany table, then named her price. $50,000. Cash. Or she'd take Sophie and make sure he never saw his daughter again. This is the story of a janitor who had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. A single father facing the worst night of his life, only to discover that sometimes the people watching from the shadows see more than you ever knew. If you're watching from New York, Tokyo, Lagos, or anywhere between, drop your city in the comments and hit that like button so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The fluorescent lights in the hallway outside Ethan Reed's apartment complex buzzed like dying insects, casting sickly yellow pools across cracked linoleum that hadn't been replaced since the 90s. It was 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, and Ethan was running late. Again. His daughter Sophie's backpack hung from one shoulder while he fumbled with his keyring, the metal cold against fingers still stiff from scrubbing bathroom tiles in the financial district. The janitorial company uniform clung to his back, damp with sweat, despite the October chill seeping through the building's thin walls. "Daddy, you said we'd make pancakes tonight," Sophie reminded him, her 7-year-old voice carrying that particular brand of hope that broke his heart a little more each day. "I know, sweetheart, I know." Ethan finally got the door open, ushering her inside their modest 2-bedroom. Had even agreed to the custody arrangement she proposed, alternating weekends, holidays split down the middle. But Brooke never showed up for her first scheduled weekend. Or the second. Or any of them. She sent cards on Sophie's birthday, called maybe once every couple months. And now, 2 years of silence later, she wanted a hearing? He didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the dark listening to the building settle around him, the sounds of other lives bleeding through thin walls, arguments in Spanish from 3B, a crying baby in 2C, the couple upstairs whose bed frame rhythmically thumped against the floor every Thursday like clockwork. At 5:45, he gave up, made himself instant coffee, and got Sophie ready for school. "Am I going to Aunt Marie's after school?" Sophie asked while Ethan braided her hair, a skill he'd learned from YouTube tutorials during those first horrible months alone. "Yeah, sweetheart. I've got something I need to do this afternoon." "Is it about Mom?" Ethan's hands stilled. Sophie was looking at him in the mirror, her expression too knowing for 7 years old. "What makes you think that? You get a face. When it's about her, like you're scared and angry at the same time." Kids saw too much, understood too much. Ethan kissed the top of her head. "Don't worry about it, okay? I'll pick you up from Marie's by 6. We'll get McDonald's on the way home. Can I get a Happy Meal?" "You can get 2 Happy Meals if you want." Sophie grinned, and for a moment everything felt almost normal. The law offices of Hamilton and Cross occupied the 17th floor of a glass tower in the financial district where Ethan cleaned bathrooms 5 nights a week. The irony wasn't lost on him as he stood in the elevator at 3:45 that afternoon, still wearing his work boots because he'd come straight from a half shift Rodriguez had grudgingly approved. Ethan's boots squeaked against the polished floor. Through glass walls, he could see people in suits having important conversations, young associates buried in documents, the machinery of law and money grinding forward. Conference Room B had its door half open. Ethan could hear voices inside. Brooke's laugh, bright and familiar and wrong in this place. He stopped in the doorway. The room was dominated by a long table surrounded by high-backed chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city skyline, the kind of view people paid millions for. And there, at the far end of the table, sat Brooke. She looked good. Better than good. Her dark hair was shorter than he remembered, cut in a sleek style that probably had a name he didn't know. She wore a cream-colored suit that fit like it was made for her, and probably was. Diamond studs glinted in her ears. She'd always been pretty, but this was something different. This was money pretty. Success pretty. You're living in that terrible apartment in a terrible neighborhood, working a terrible job that barely keeps the lights on. Is that really the life you want for our daughter? It's the life I have. I'm doing my best. Your best isn't good enough. The words came out flat, final. Jennifer, show him the proposal. The attorney slid a document across the table. Ethan picked it up, the paper heavy and expensive between his fingers. He scanned the legal language, the clauses and subclauses, until he got to the core of it. Brooke wanted full custody. Wanted to move Sophie to their home in Riverside, an upscale suburb 40 miles away. Wanted to enroll her in private school. Wanted to, the document said, provide the minor child with the stable, enriched environment she deserves and requires for healthy development. You can't do this. Ethan's voice came out rough. The original agreement was temporary, Jennifer interrupted smoothly, and circumstances have changed significantly. My client is now in a stable marriage with substantial household income. You, Mr. Reed, have experienced continued financial difficulty. According to our research, you've been late on rent 4 times in the past year. Your daughter has been to the emergency room twice for asthma-related incidents that might have been prevented with better living conditions. You work night shifts, which means Sophie is frequently left with neighbors or relatives while you're absent. I work night shifts so I can take her to school in the morning and pick her up in the afternoon, so I can be there for her. You're there for her in an apartment with mold issues and inadequate heating. You're there for her while working 60-hour weeks and still struggling to make ends meet. Jennifer's voice wasn't unkind, but it was relentless. Mr. Reed, my client wants what's best for Sophie. We believe that's a home with 2 parents, financial security, and opportunities for growth and development you cannot provide. Ethan looked at Brooke again. Really looked at her. Tried to find the woman he'd married, the one who'd cried with joy when Sophie was born, who'd promised forever in a city hall ceremony that cost them $40 in a dream. But that woman was gone, if she'd ever really existed. This Brooke was a stranger dressed in expensive clothes and easy cruelty. If you care about her at all, Ethan said quietly, you'll drop this. You'll let her be. I do care about her. That's why I'm doing this. Brooke glanced at Derek, who nodded encouragingly. Ethan, I'm prepared to make this easy on everyone. I don't want a protracted legal battle. I don't want to drag Sophie through court proceedings and evaluations and all the ugliness that comes with contested custody. Then don't do this. I'm offering you a way out. Brooke paused, and Ethan saw something flicker across her face. Calculation, maybe, or triumph. Agree to the custody modification. Sign the papers, and I'll give you $50,000. The room went silent. Ethan heard his own heartbeat, too loud, too fast. What? $50,000. Brooke's voice was steady. Cash. Enough to get yourself on your feet, pay off your debts, maybe go back to school, get some training, build a better life for yourself. You could move somewhere nicer, get a better job. And Sophie would have everything she needs with us. Everyone wins. You're trying to buy my daughter. I'm trying to give you a future while providing Sophie with the life she deserves. Brooke leaned back in her chair. Think about it, Ethan. What can you really give her? You're drowning. Every day is a struggle. Every month you're one emergency away from losing everything. I'm offering you a lifeline and giving Sophie a real home. That's not buying her. That's being realistic. Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Go to hell. Mr. Reed, Jennifer began, but he was already moving toward the door. Ethan, wait. Brooke's voice followed him. If you fight this, you'll lose. We have resources. We have stability. We have everything a judge will want to see. You'll spend money you don't have on a lawyer who can't win. And in the end, you'll still lose custody, except you'll be even more broke and Sophie will have watched you fail. Is that what you want? Is that pride really worth it? He stopped in the doorway, his back to them. Think about her, Brooke continued, softer now. Not about your ego, not about what you think you deserve. Think about Sophie. Think about what's actually best for her. You can't give her piano lessons or tutors or college savings. You can barely give her dinner that isn't from a box. I can give her the world, Ethan. All you have to do is step aside. She doesn't need the world. Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. She needs her dad. He walked out before Brooke could respond, before Jennifer could say whatever lawyerly thing she'd prepared, before Derek could offer whatever sympathetic bullshit rich men offered poor men they pitied. He walked past the reception area where the pretty receptionist pretended not to notice his exit, past the elevator bank, down the stairs because he couldn't stand the thought of being trapped in a box right now, 17 floors of concrete and metal and burning legs that couldn't outrun the reality settling into his bones. By the time he hit the street level, reality had caught up. Brooke was right. About all of it. He was drowning. Had been drowning for 2 years, treading water with lead weights tied to his ankles, telling himself he was swimming when really he was just sinking slower. The apartment was terrible. The neighborhood was dangerous. Sophie had ended up in the ER twice last winter because the mold in their building triggered her asthma and he couldn't afford to move somewhere better. He worked 60 hours a week and still had to choose between paying the electric bill on time or buying Sophie new shoes when she grew out of her old ones. And a court would see all of that, would see Brooke's perfect suburban home and stable marriage and fat bank account, would see Ethan's work boots and frayed collar and permanent exhaustion, would see which parent could provide private schools and which parent was struggling to provide basic necessities. He'd lose. Of course he'd lose. The rain started as he stood on the sidewalk outside the building, cold October rain that soaked through his shirt in seconds. People rushed past with umbrellas and briefcases, everyone heading somewhere important, everyone with somewhere to be. Ethan just stood there, getting wet, watching the city move around him like he was a stone in a river. His phone was still dead, had been dead since last night. He needed to charge it, needed to call Marie and tell her he'd be late picking up Sophie, needed to figure out what the hell he was going to do, but his body felt too heavy to move. His mind felt too slow to think. Everything felt impossible. Across the street, under the awning of a coffee shop that charged $8 for a latte, Brooke emerged from the building. She had an umbrella, expensive looking, probably designer. Derek was with her, holding it over her head like a dutiful husband should. They didn't notice Ethan, or maybe they did and didn't care. He watched them get into a car, a new Audi, sleek and silver. Watched the car pull away into traffic. Watched his ex-wife disappear into the city, into her better life, carrying the threat of taking his daughter with her. The rain came down harder. Ethan started walking. He didn't know where he was going, just knew he couldn't stand still anymore. His feet carried him away from the financial district, through streets he'd walked 1,000 times on his way to work, past buildings he'd cleaned and would clean again tomorrow night if he still had a job after missing half a shift. $50,000. The number kept circling his mind like a vulture. What couldn't he do with $50,000? He could pay off every bill, could get a better apartment, could take Sophie somewhere nice on vacation, just once, just so she'd have a memory of her dad doing something right. Could maybe go back to school like Brooke suggested, learn a trade, become something more than a janitor who smelled like bleach. But he'd have to give up his daughter to get it. The math was simple and horrible. His pride versus her future. His rights as a father versus her right to a stable home. His love versus their money. He walked for an hour, maybe more, until his clothes were soaked through and the rain had plastered his hair to his skull. Until he ended up in a neighborhood he didn't recognize, standing outside a bodega that advertised phone chargers in the window. He went inside, bought the cheapest one they had for $12 he couldn't afford, plugged his phone into an outlet next to the refrigerated section, and waited for it to come back to life. When it finally powered on, he had 17 missed calls. Most were from Marie, increasingly worried. 2 were from Rodriguez, increasingly angry, and 1 was from a number he didn't recognize. He called Marie first. "Hey, it's me. I'm sorry, I'm coming to get Sophie now. Ethan, Jesus, I've been calling you for hours. Are you okay?" "Yeah. No, I don't know. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Sophie's fine. She's watching TV. Take your time." "But Ethan, what happened?" "Brooke wants custody. She's got lawyers and money and she wants to take Sophie." Marie was quiet for a moment. She was Ethan's older sister, the one who'd helped him navigate the divorce, who'd taken Sophie more times than he could count when he was working double shifts. "What do you need?" "I don't know. A lawyer I can't afford. A better job. A different life." "We'll figure it out. Come get Sophie. We'll talk." He hung up and stared at his phone. The unknown number bothered him. He called it back. A woman's voice answered, smooth and professional. "Mr. Reed, thank you for returning my call." "Who is this?" "My name is Vivian Sterling. I understand you had a difficult meeting this afternoon." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. How do you know about that? I know quite a bit about you, Mr. Reed. I've been watching you for some time. I wonder if we might meet to discuss your situation. I don't know who you are or what you want, but I want to help, that's all. No strings, no tricks, just a conversation. There's a cafe 2 blocks from where you're standing, Morton's. I'm there now. I'll buy you coffee and tell you what I know. After that, you can walk away if you'd like, but I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. How do you know where I'm standing? Because I can see you through the window, Mr. Reed. You're soaking wet, and you look like a man who's run out of options. I'm offering you one more option. The least you can do is hear me out. The line went dead. Ethan stood there holding his phone, rain dripping from his clothes onto the bodega floor, trying to process what just happened. Someone had been watching him. Someone knew about the custody meeting. Someone was offering help from a stranger, which was either a miracle or a trap. He should walk away. Should get Sophie, go home, figure this out on his own, the way he'd figured out everything else for the past 2 years. Should not follow mysterious women to coffee shops like he was in some kind of movie. But Brooke's words were still echoing in his head. You'll lose. You'll spend money you don't have on a lawyer who can't win. And the simple, terrible truth was that she was right. He had no moves left, no resources, no options. Except maybe this one. Morton's was a small place tucked between a dry cleaner and a nail salon, the kind of cafe that survived on neighborhood regulars rather than tourist traffic. Ethan pushed through the door, dripping water on their floor, drawing looks from the handful of people scattered at small tables. And there, in the back corner, sat a woman who didn't belong. She was maybe 40, dressed in a charcoal suit that was somehow both understated and obviously expensive. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat twist. She sat with perfect posture, hands folded around a coffee cup, watching him with eyes that missed nothing. Ethan walked to her table. Vivian Sterling? Ethan Reed. She gestured to the chair across from her. Please sit. You look like you've had quite an afternoon. He sat, leaving puddles of rainwater on the chair. You said you've been watching me. That's not exactly comforting. I imagine not. Let me be direct. I own Sterling Industries. We're a private equity firm that manages assets across multiple sectors. One of those sectors includes commercial real estate. One of those real estate holdings is the building where you work. The Meridian Building. Yes, I've seen you there, working. Caring for your daughter when you couldn't find childcare. Staying late to finish jobs properly. Going above and beyond for $14.50 an hour. She paused. I've also had you investigated. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. Why? Because people interest me. Because I saw something in you. Dedication, integrity, love. Things money can't buy but that are worth more than money. And because I wanted to understand your story before I decided whether to act. Act how? Vivian took a sip of her coffee, her movements precise and controlled. Ethan, I know about Brooke's custody filing. I know about her offer. I know you have no legal representation and no resources to fight her. I know that by every conventional measure, you're about to lose your daughter. If you're here to tell me I'm screwed, I already know. I'm here to tell you that you're not. She set down her cup. I'm offering you support. Legal representation from the best family attorney in the state. Financial backing to get your life stable. And a job. A real job. With real pay. Doing work that matters. It sounded too good. Way too good. What's the catch? The catch is that you have to accept it. The catch is that you have to believe you deserve it. The catch is that you have to stop seeing yourself as a janitor who doesn't matter and start seeing yourself as a father fighting for his child. Vivian's expression softened slightly. I'm not a charity, Ethan. I'm not doing this out of pity. I'm doing this because I believe in recognizing quality when I see it. You've been invisible for too long to too many people. I'm offering to change that. Why me? Why not any of the other 1,000 struggling single parents in this city? Because I happen to notice you. Because sometimes in business and in life, you trust your instincts about people. Mine are rarely wrong. She pulled a business card from her jacket pocket and slid it across the table. Take the night. Think about it. Call me tomorrow if you want my help. Or don't call me and handle this alone. Either way, I wish you the best. Ethan picked up the card. Heavy cardstock, minimalist dozen. Vivian Sterling, CEO, with a phone number and nothing else. I don't understand why you do this. You don't have to understand it. You just have to decide if you want it. Vivian stood, leaving cash on the table for her coffee. For what it's worth, Ethan, I don't think Brooke's offer is about Sophie's best interests. I think it's about control and ego and proving she can take something from you. Don't let her win just because she has money. You have something she doesn't. You have love and presence and 2 years of showing up every single day. That matters. That wins. You just need someone in your corner who has the resources to make sure the court sees it. She walked out, leaving Ethan alone with a business card and the feeling that his entire life had just pivoted on an axis he didn't know existed. He sat there for a long time, staring at the card, listening to rain hammer the windows. His phone buzzed. Marie, asking if he was okay, reminding him Sophie was waiting. He texted back that he was on his way, then looked at the card one more time before tucking it into his pocket. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The evening rush was in full swing, the city alive with movement and purpose. Ethan started walking toward Marie's apartment, his mind racing through everything that had happened in the past 6 hours. The meeting. Brooke's offer. The woman in the cafe who'd appeared like something out of a dream or a nightmare, he couldn't decide which. $50,000 to give up his daughter, or help from a stranger to keep her. The choice should have been obvious. But standing there on a rainy street corner, soaking wet and exhausted and more alone than he'd ever felt, Ethan wondered if he was strong enough to accept help, if he deserved it, if this was real or just another way for the universe to remind him he was out of his depth. His phone buzzed again. Not Marie this time. A text from the unknown number, Vivian's number. One more thing. Brooke's lawyer mentioned your rent being late 4 times this year. That's not a coincidence. They've been building a case. They know your vulnerabilities. They're planning to use them. You need to be ready. Ethan stared at the message. They'd been planning this, watching him, documenting his struggles to use against him. While he'd been trying to survive, they'd been preparing to take everything that mattered. He thought about Sophie, about the way she looked at him when he picked her up from school, like he was the most important person in the world, about the way she fell asleep holding his hand when she had nightmares, about the way she'd asked him last week if Mommy was ever coming back, and how he'd told her that Mommy loved her, but sometimes grown-ups made choices that were hard to understand. He pulled out Vivian's card and stared at it in the streetlight. Then he put it back in his pocket, squared his shoulders, and headed to Marie's apartment to hold his daughter and figure out what came next. Marie's apartment smelled like garlic and tomato sauce, the kind of smell that meant home even when home was someone else's place. Sophie was curled up on the couch watching cartoons when Ethan walked in, his clothes still damp, his hair plastered to his head. She looked up and her face lit up in a way that made his chest ache. "Daddy!" She jumped up and ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "You're all wet." "I know, baby. I got caught in the rain." He held her tight, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her solid and real against him. "You ready to go home? Can we still get McDonald's?" "Yeah, we can still get McDonald's." Marie appeared in the doorway to the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was 5 years older than Ethan, with the same dark hair and the same stubborn jaw that had gotten them both through a childhood neither of them talked about much. She looked at him, and he could see her reading the whole story written in his posture, his wet clothes, the exhaustion in his eyes. "Sophie, honey, go pack up your backpack," Marie said. "Make sure you got all your homework." Sophie ran off to the spare bedroom where she kept a few toys and books for the nights Marie watched her. Once she was out of earshot, Marie crossed her arms and gave Ethan the look, the one that said she loved him and was worried about him and was ready to fight whoever needed fighting. "Tell me." So he did. Told her about the meeting, about Brooke and her expensive suit with her expensive husband and her expensive lawyer, about the custody petition and the $50,000 offer. About walking in the rain until a stranger called him and told him she'd been watching him for 2 years. Marie listened without interrupting, her expression darkening with each detail. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "This Vivian Sterling," she finally said. "You looked her up?" "My phone barely has battery. I came straight here." So some woman you've never met knows where you work, knows about your custody case, knows your financial situation, and wants to help out of the goodness of her heart? I know how it sounds. It sounds like a scam or something worse. Maybe. Probably. Ethan pulled Vivian's card from his pocket and handed it to Marie. But what if it's not? Marie examined the card, then pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved across the screen, searching, reading. Her eyebrows went up. Holy shit, Ethan. Vivian Sterling is real. Sterling Industries is real. She's worth like $2 billion. $2 billion? Give or take. She's all over the business news. Started her company 15 years ago. Built it from nothing. She's known for... Marie kept reading, scrolling. For finding undervalued assets and turning them profitable. For seeing potential where others don't. For aggressive acquisition strategies and loyalty to her people. She looked up. She's legitimate, but that doesn't mean this offer is. What would she get out of helping me? I don't know. Maybe she collects charity cases. Maybe she's bored. Maybe she's running some kind of scam I can't figure out yet. Marie handed the card back. Or maybe she's exactly what she says she is. Someone who noticed you and wants to help. Either way, you need to be careful. Sophie came back with her backpack, chattering about something that happened at recess. Ethan listened with half his attention while the other half circled around the same thoughts over and over. Brooke's offer. Vivian's offer. The reality that doing nothing meant losing. They got McDonald's like he'd promised. Sophie got her Happy Meal and played with the cheap plastic toy, while Ethan picked at fries he didn't taste. The restaurant was bright and loud, full of families that looked normal and whole. A mother helping her toddler with chicken nuggets. A father teaching his son how to use chopsticks with mixed success. People living regular lives where custody battles and billionaire benefactors weren't part of the equation. Daddy, you're not eating, Sophie observed. Just tired, sweetheart. Is it because of Mom? Ethan set down his fries. Why do you ask that? Sophie shrugged, her 7-year-old shoulders thin under her pink hoodie. Aunt Marie said you had to go see Mom today. Did she want to visit me? The question landed like a punch. Ethan reached across the table and took Sophie's small hand in his. Baby, your mom loves you. You know that, right? I guess. Sophie's voice was small. But she never comes to see me, and you get sad when you talk about her, so I figured maybe she doesn't love me enough to visit. That's not... Ethan stopped, because what could he say? That Brooke did love her but had other priorities? That sometimes adults made choices that hurt the people they were supposed to protect? That love was complicated and imperfect and sometimes not enough? Your mom and I have some things we need to work out, he said carefully. Grown-up things. But none of it is your fault, and none of it means you're not loved. You understand? Sophie nodded, but her eyes were uncertain. She went back to her Happy Meal, and Ethan felt like he'd failed some test he didn't know he was taking. That night, after Sophie was asleep in her small bedroom with her stuffed rabbit and her nightlight shaped like a moon, Ethan sat on the couch and finally looked up Vivian Sterling on his phone. Marie was right. She was everywhere. Forbes profiles about her business acumen, articles about her acquisition of struggling companies, and her ability to turn them around. Photos from charity galas where she stood next to politicians and celebrities, always poised, always in control. There were quotes from her in business journals about seeing value where others saw failure, about investing in people rather than just assets. And then he found a profile from 5 years ago that mentioned her background. She'd grown up poor, working class, daughter of a single mother who cleaned houses to keep them fed. She'd put herself through college working night shifts at a hospital. She'd built her first company with loans she'd had to fight for, proving everyone wrong who'd said she'd never make it. She knew what it was like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to fight for everything. Maybe that's why she'd noticed him. Ethan pulled out her card again and stared at the phone number. It was almost 11. Too late to call. But the custody hearing was coming. He didn't even know when exactly. The email had said something about a preliminary date to be scheduled, and every day he waited was a day Brooke's lawyers spent building their case. He dialed. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Reed, I was hoping you'd call. It's late. I'm sorry. I'm still at the office. You're not disturbing anything. He heard the sound of papers being moved, a chair creaking. Have you made a decision? I don't understand why you're doing this, and I need to understand before I can accept. Vivian was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than it had been in the cafe. When I was 12 years old, my mother got sick. Pneumonia that turned into something worse. We didn't have insurance. She couldn't afford to miss work. So she kept cleaning houses while she had a fever, kept pushing through until she collapsed in someone's kitchen, and they called an ambulance. Ethan listened, hearing the city sounds through his window, sirens in the distance, a car alarm, the endless background noise of people living their lives. The hospital bills nearly destroyed us, Vivian continued. We were going to lose our apartment. I was going to end up in foster care. And then a woman whose house my mother cleaned, a woman named Margaret Chen, paid the bills. All of them. She said my mother had worked for her for 6 years and never once cut corners, never once did less than her absolute best. She said that kind of integrity was worth investing in. What happened? My mother recovered. We kept our apartment. I got to stay with her and finish school and eventually go to college. And Margaret Chen became my mentor. She's the one who taught me to see value in people, not just balance sheets. She died 3 years ago, but I think about her every day. About the fact that I exist in this world, that I built this company, because someone saw my mother struggling and decided to help. Ethan's throat was tight. I'm not your mother. No. But you're someone doing your absolute best in impossible circumstances. You're someone showing up every day for your daughter, even when everything is stacked against you. You're someone worth investing in. Vivian paused. I'm not Margaret Chen. I can't be her. But I can pay forward what she did for my family. If you'll let me. What do you get out of it? The satisfaction of helping. The knowledge that Sophie gets to keep her father. And maybe, if this works out, a damn good employee who understands the value of second chances. Ethan looked around his apartment. At the water stain on the ceiling, at the radiator that clanked, at the toys scattered across the floor, and the dishes in the sink and all the evidence of a life lived paycheck to paycheck. He thought about Brooke in her cream suit, about Derek's wedding ring catching the light, about Jennifer Moss's sharp eyes cataloging all his failures. If I do this, he said slowly, I need to know it's real. I need to know I'm not going to end up owing you something I can't pay back. No strings, Ethan. You want it in writing, I'll have my lawyers draw up an agreement. The legal representation is pro bono through a firm I retain. The job offer is legitimate. You'd be working as an operations supervisor for our facilities management division. Better hours, better pay, health insurance. You'd earn every dollar. And if it doesn't work out, you walk away with no obligation. Why operations supervisor? Because I've watched you work. You're thorough, you're efficient. You notice things others miss. You care about doing the job right, not just doing it fast. Those are the qualities I need in someone overseeing building operations across multiple properties. He heard her smile. Plus, you already know the Meridian building inside and out. That's valuable institutional knowledge. It sounded too good. But then again, everything about the last 24 hours had felt surreal. Brooke's offer had been too cruel. Vivian's offer was too generous. Reality had apparently decided to abandon all middle ground. Okay, Ethan said, I'll take your help, but I need to be clear. I'm doing this for Sophie, not for me. That's exactly why I'm offering. They talked for another 20 minutes. Vivian gave him the name of the attorney, Grant Maddox, apparently one of the best family law attorneys in the state. She told him someone would call in the morning to set up a meeting. She told him to document everything, every interaction with Brooke, every expense, every moment with Sophie. She told him to stop thinking of himself as powerless. When he finally hung up, Ethan sat in the dark and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope that maybe this wouldn't end with him losing everything that mattered. He checked on Sophie before bed. She was sprawled across her twin mattress, one arm around her rabbit, her mouth slightly open. Moonlight from the window painted her face in silver. She looked so small, so vulnerable, so completely dependent on him to protect her from a world that didn't care how hard he tried. I'm not going to lose you, he whispered. I promise. The next morning came too fast. Ethan got Sophie ready for school, made her breakfast, braided her hair. Normal routine, normal motions, except nothing felt normal anymore. He kept waiting for Vivian to call and say it was all a mistake, or for Brooke's lawyer to show up with new threats, or for reality to crash back down and remind him that people like him didn't get rescued by billionaire benefactors. His phone rang at 9 a.m. Unknown number. Mr. Reed, this is Grant Maddox. Vivian Sterling asked me to give you a call. The voice was deep and confident, the kind of voice that belonged to someone used to winning arguments. Ethan's pulse kicked up. Yeah. Hi. Thanks for calling. I've reviewed the custody petition your ex-wife filed. I've also had my team pull your divorce decree and the original custody agreement. We need to meet today if possible. Can you come to my office at 2? I work. Ethan started, then stopped. He didn't work. Not in the way that mattered. Rodriguez had already cut his hours after yesterday's half-shift disaster. Yeah, I can be there at 2. Good. Bring any documentation you have, pay stubs, rent receipts, medical records for Sophie, school records, anything that shows your involvement in her life. Also bring any communication you've had with your ex-wife, emails, texts, voicemails, everything. Okay. Mr. Reed, I want you to know something before we meet. I don't take cases I don't think I can win. Vivian Sterling wouldn't have sent you to me if she didn't believe you had a strong case. So take a breath. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win. The call ended. Ethan stood in his kitchen holding his phone, feeling like he'd been picked up by a wave he couldn't control. Things were moving fast, too fast. Yesterday he'd been a janitor with no options. Today he had a high-powered attorney and a billionaire in his corner. He spent the morning gathering documents. His apartment was small enough that he knew where everything was. The folder with Sophie's school records, the envelope with medical receipts, the shoebox with pay stubs and rent receipts, and all the paper proof of a life lived on the edge. He found text messages from Brooke, sporadic and impersonal. Birthday wishes that felt obligatory. Promises to visit that never materialized. And then from 3 months ago, the first hint of what was coming, a text asking about Sophie's school, her routine, whether Ethan had family nearby. Building a case. Just like Vivian had said. Grant Maddox's office was in a different building from Hamilton and Cross, but it was the same kind of wealth. Glass and steel and the smell of expensive coffee. The receptionist smiled at Ethan like he belonged there, like his worn jeans and nervous energy were perfectly normal. She offered him water and showed him to a conference room with a view of the harbor. Maddox arrived 5 minutes later. He was in his 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, but he shook Ethan's hand with genuine warmth. Good to meet you. Let's talk about your daughter. They spread documents across the table. Maddox asked questions, detailed, specific questions about Sophie's routine, her medical history, Brooke's involvement over the past 2 years. He took notes on a legal pad in handwriting so neat it looked printed. Walk me through a typical week, Maddox said, from Monday to Sunday. Everything you do with Sophie. So Ethan did. Told him about morning routines and breakfast together. About walking Sophie to school every day. About picking her up every afternoon. About homework at the kitchen table and dinner that was usually simple but always together. About bath time and bedtime stories and the way Sophie wouldn't fall asleep unless he sat with her for at least 10 minutes. About weekends at the park or the library because they were free. About the way Sophie had learned to be content with small things, a new book from the dollar store, ice cream on Fridays if he had extra cash, family movie night on the couch with popcorn. Maddox listened, writing, occasionally asking follow-up questions. When Ethan finished, the attorney sat back and tapped his pen against the legal pad. Here's what I'm seeing, Maddox said. You're an active, engaged parent who's been primary caregiver for 2 years while your ex-wife has been essentially absent. That's significant. The court values stability and consistency, which you've provided. Your financial situation isn't ideal, but poverty isn't grounds for removing a child from a loving home. Brooke's lawyer made it sound like I was neglecting Sophie by being poor. Brooke's lawyer is playing a game, an expensive, aggressive game designed to intimidate you into accepting their terms. Maddox leaned forward. But here's what they're not counting on. You having representation that can counter every one of their arguments. They think they can steamroll you with resources. We're going to show them that resources don't matter as much as the truth. What about our offer, the $50,000? Maddox's expression hardened. That's extortion, unethical and potentially illegal. Did you record the conversation? No. Pity, but you're not the only person who was in that room. If we need to, we can subpoena Jennifer Moss's notes from the meeting. We can put Brooke on the stand and ask her under oath if she offered you money to relinquish custody. My guess is she'll fold before we get there. Why would she do this? She didn't want Sophie when she left. Why now? Maddox shrugged. Could be genuine regret. Could be her new husband wanting to play happy family. Could be guilt that's manifesting as control. Could be she sees you as unfinished business she wants to resolve. He paused. Or it could be exactly what Vivian Sterling suspects, ego and power. Some people can't stand to see others move on without them. They have to win, even if winning hurts everyone involved. Ethan thought about Brooke in that conference room, calm and poised and certain. Thought about the way she'd looked at him like he was a problem to be solved rather than a person she'd once loved. What happens next? Next, we respond to their petition with our own filing. We document your involvement as primary parent. We highlight Brooke's absence and her lack of established relationship with Sophie. We request a custody evaluation and home visits. We make them prove why changing the current arrangement serves Sophie's best interest. And we make damn sure they can't. How long does this take? Depends. Could be a few months. Could be longer if they want to drag it out. Maddox must have seen something in Ethan's face because his expression softened. I know that sounds like forever when your daughter's future is on the line, but family court moves at its own pace. What matters is that we're building a strong case. Every day you keep doing what you're doing, being a good father, strengthens our position. They talked for another hour. Maddox explained the process, the timelines, the likely strategies Brooke's team would use. He talked about custody evaluations and court-appointed advocates and all the machinery of law that would now grind through Ethan's life. It was overwhelming and exhausting and somehow reassuring because at least now there was a plan. At least now he wasn't facing this alone. When Ethan finally left the office, the sun was setting over the harbor, painting the water in gold and orange. His phone rang as he stood on the sidewalk trying to process everything. Vivian Sterling. How did the meeting go? Good, I think. Grant seems to know what he's doing. He does. He's the best. Vivian paused. How are you holding up? The question surprised him. In all of this, the legal strategy and the documentation and the battle plans, no one had actually asked how he felt. I'm scared, he admitted. Terrified. But at least I'm not helpless anymore. Good. Fear is useful if you channel it right. Helplessness is poison. He heard papers rustling on her end. I want to schedule a meeting for tomorrow. You, me, and our HR director. We need to discuss the job offer in detail. Make sure you understand what you're signing up for. Vivian, I still don't understand why you're doing this. I told you why. You told me about Margaret Chen and your mother, but that was them. This is me. You don't know me. For all you know, I'm a terrible employee or a secret asshole or someone who's going to disappoint you. Vivian laughed, actually laughed. You know what I see when I look at you, Ethan? I see someone who shows up every day, every shift, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You think I haven't done background checks, haven't talked to people who work with you? Your supervisor Rodriguez says you're the most reliable guy on his crew. Says you never complain, never cut corners, never let the quality slip even when you're dead on your feet. Rodriguez said that? People notice, Ethan, even when you think you're invisible. The question is whether you're ready to be visible, ready to step into something bigger than night shifts and survival mode. Ethan thought about Sophie, about the custody battle ahead, about the chance to give her a life that wasn't defined by struggle. Yeah, he said, I'm ready. Good. Tomorrow at 10, Sterling Industries headquarters. Ask for me at the desk. That night, Ethan cooked dinner. Actual dinner, not boxed mac and cheese. He made spaghetti with jarred sauce and garlic bread from the freezer section, and he and Sophie ate together at their small table while she told him about school, about her friend Emma, who had a loose tooth, about the art project they were doing with construction paper, about normal 7-year-old things that felt like miracles because they were still his to hear. After Sophie was asleep, Ethan pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He called his mother. She answered on the third ring, her voice wary. Ethan? Hey, Mom. Is everything okay? Is Sophie? Sophie's fine. We're both fine. I just wanted to talk. His mother, Linda Reed, had never approved of Brooke, had warned him the marriage wouldn't last, that Brooke wanted things he couldn't provide. She'd been right, which made it harder to call her now and admit he needed help. But she listened as he told her about the custody battle, about Vivian Sterling, about everything that had happened in the past 2 days. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. This woman, she finally said. You trust her? I don't know, but I don't have a lot of options. You always have options, baby. You just don't always like what they are. Linda sighed. Brooke coming back like this? I'm not surprised. She never could stand to see you happy without her, even when she was the one who left. I'm not happy, Mom. I'm barely keeping my head above water. But you're doing it. You're surviving. You're raising Sophie. That's happiness to someone like Brooke who walked away and regretted it. She can't stand that you didn't fall apart without her. Ethan hadn't thought about it that way. You really think that's what this is? I think people are complicated and cruel in ways we don't always understand. But I also think you're a good father and Sophie's lucky to have you. Don't you dare let Brooke convince you otherwise. They talked for a while longer, his mother telling him about her life in Florida, about the retirement community where she'd moved after Sophie was born, about her plans to visit for Thanksgiving. It was normal conversation, the kind they used to have before Ethan's life imploded, and he stopped calling because he couldn't handle her I told you so's about Brooke. When he hung up, he felt steadier, like he'd reconnected to something solid. The next morning, Sterling Industries headquarters occupied 30 floors of a downtown tower that made the Meridian building look modest. Ethan wore his least-worn jeans and the button-down shirt from the custody meeting, feeling desperately underdressed as he walked through a lobby that looked like a modern art museum. The security guard checked his ID and directed him to the elevators. Vivian's office was on the 28th floor, behind a reception area where a woman who looked like she belonged on a runway smiled and offered him coffee. Real coffee, from a machine that probably cost more than his car had. He accepted and tried not to spill it on the leather furniture. Vivian appeared 10 minutes later wearing a navy suit and an expression of complete focus. Ethan, good, you're early. Come with me. Her office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The furniture was sleek and minimal, the kind of expensive that looked simple. There was a woman already waiting, early 40s, black woman with natural hair and a warm smile. This is Denise Okafor, our Director of Human Resources, Vivian said. Denise, Ethan Reed. They shook hands. Denise gestured to a conference table by the windows. Let's talk about what we're offering and what we expect in return. For the next hour, they walked through job responsibilities, salary, benefits. The numbers made Ethan's head spin. The salary alone was more than double what he made now. Health insurance, dental, vision, paid time off, retirement matching. It was the kind of job package he'd thought existed only for other people. The role is operations supervisor for our commercial properties division, Denise explained. You'd oversee facilities management for 15 buildings in the metro area. That means coordinating maintenance crews, managing vendor relationships, ensuring all properties meet our standards for safety and functionality. It's a management position, which means you'd have direct reports and budget authority. I've never managed people before. You've managed yourself and a 7-year-old while working 60 hours a week, Vivian said. Management is just applied organization and communication. You'll learn. When would this start? 2 weeks. That gives you time to wrap up your current position and get oriented. Denise slid a folder across the table. This is your employment agreement. Take it home, read it carefully. If you have questions or want changes, we can negotiate. This isn't take it or leave it. Ethan stared at the folder. His hands were shaking slightly. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Vivian told him. Say you'll consider that maybe you deserve this. That's all I'm asking. He left Sterling Industries in a daze, the folder tucked under his arm like contraband. Rode the elevator down from the 28th floor feeling like he was descending from a dream back into reality. But when he walked out onto the street, the city looked different, sharper, more full of possibility. His phone buzzed. Text from Grant Maddox. Filed our response to custody petition. Brooke's team will receive it today. Expect pushback. Don't engage directly with her or her lawyer without me present. It was starting. The battle was officially joined. Ethan took a breath, squared his shoulders, and headed to pick up Sophie from school, carrying with him an employment agreement that could change their lives and the knowledge that no matter what happened next, at least he was fighting back. At least he wasn't alone anymore. Sophie was waiting by the school gate with her teacher when Ethan arrived, her backpack nearly as big as she was. She saw him and waved, her whole face lighting up the way it always did, like he was the best thing she'd see all day. That look never got old, never stopped making him feel like maybe he was doing something right. How was school, sweetheart? Good. We learned about fractions and I got a gold star on my spelling test. She grabbed his hand as they started walking toward the bus stop. Can we go to the park? Ethan checked his watch, 3:30. He didn't have to be at work until 8, and for once he had the energy to be more than just present. Yeah, we can go to the park. They rode the bus to Riverside Park, a small green space wedged between apartment buildings, where kids played on rusted equipment and parents sat on benches pretending their phones were more interesting than their children. Sophie ran straight for the swings, her backpack abandoned on a bench next to Ethan. He pushed her, listening to her laugh, watching her hair fly out behind her as she went higher and higher. Higher, Daddy. Any higher and you'll fly away. I want to fly away. I want to touch the clouds. She was happy. That's what mattered. In a life full of struggle and uncertainty, Sophie was happy because she didn't know any better. She didn't know their apartment was substandard, or that her clothes came from thrift stores, or that her father spent every night scrubbing toilets so she could have breakfast in the morning. She just knew she was loved, and for now, that was enough. Ethan's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, expecting another message from Grant Maddox. Instead, it was an unknown number with a text that made his blood run cold. We need to talk. Meet me at Morrison's Coffee, corner of 5th and Madison. 1 hour. Come alone. Brooke. He stared at the message, his jaw tightening. Grant had explicitly told him not to engage with Brooke without legal representation present. But Morrison's Coffee was 3 blocks from the park, and the text had that commanding tone Brooke had perfected during their marriage, the one that said she expected compliance. Daddy, you stopped pushing. Ethan looked up. Sophie was twisted around on the swing, looking at him with concern. He forced a smile and gave her another push. Sorry, baby, got distracted. But his mind was racing. What did Brooke want? Had she received the response to her petition? Was she calling to negotiate or to threaten, or to try one more time to buy him off? Every instinct said to ignore the text, to listen to his lawyer, to not give Brooke any opportunity to twist his words or document anything that could be used against him. But another part of him, the part that had loved her once, that had built a life with her, wanted to hear what she had to say, wanted to understand why she was doing this, wanted closure on something that had never really closed. He texted back, I can't meet alone. My lawyer said no direct contact. The response came immediately. I'm not recording anything. I'm not building a case. I just want to talk to you, Ethan. Person to person. Please. Please. Brooke never said please, never asked instead of demanded. The word sat strange in the text message, out of place and unsettling. Ethan watched Sophie on the swings, watched her joy and innocence, and made a decision he knew he'd probably regret. He texted Marie, Can you watch Sophie for an hour? Emergency. Marie's response was instant. Where are you? Riverside Park. Brooke wants to meet. Ethan, no, don't do this. I have to know what she wants. That's what your lawyer is for. Jesus Christ, don't be stupid. But he was already committed to being stupid. Marie agreed to come get Sophie, arriving 15 minutes later with disapproval radiating from every pore. She pulled Ethan aside while Sophie played on the monkey bars. This is a bad idea, Marie said flatly. A terrible idea. She's going to manipulate you or provoke you or record something she can use in court. I'll be careful. You're already not being careful. Careful would be listening to your attorney. Marie grabbed his arm. Ethan, I love you, but you're an idiot when it comes to Brooke. You always have been. She knows how to get to you. Don't give her another chance. I just need to hear what she has to say, face to face. Then I'll know if this is really about Sophie or about something else. Marie's expression softened slightly. You still care about her? No, I care about understanding why my ex-wife, who abandoned our daughter, suddenly wants custody. That's different. Is it? Ethan didn't answer because he wasn't sure. Marie hugged Sophie goodbye, told her they were going to get ice cream, and shot Ethan one last look that said he was on his own if this went sideways. Then they were gone, and Ethan was walking toward Morrison's coffee with his heart pounding and his lawyer's warnings echoing in his head. The coffee shop was half empty, the late afternoon lull between lunch and dinner rushes. Brooke sat at a corner table by the window, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual polished perfection. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup. She looked younger, more like the woman he'd married, and that made this harder. She saw him and stood up. Ethan, thank you for coming. I have about 45 minutes before I need to pick up Sophie. He sat down across from her, leaving his jacket on, keeping his posture defensive. What do you want, Brooke? She sat back down, wrapping her hands around a coffee cup. I want to apologize. Whatever Ethan had expected, it wasn't that. For what? For the meeting. For Jennifer and her aggressive tactics. For the $50,000 offer. Brooke's voice was quiet, almost subdued. That wasn't how I wanted to approach this. Derek and Jennifer convinced me it was the right strategy, but it wasn't. It was cruel and it was wrong, and I'm sorry. Ethan studied her face, looking for the lie, the manipulation. But she seemed genuine. Tired, even. You're apologizing for trying to buy my daughter? I'm apologizing for making this uglier than it needed to be. For treating you like an obstacle instead of like Sophie's father. She took a breath. I got your lawyer's response. It was thorough. And reading it, seeing everything documented, how much you've done for her, how present you've been, it made me realize how absent I've been. You've had 2 years to realize that. I know. And I don't have a good excuse. I was ashamed. After I left, after I chose Derek over you and Sophie, I couldn't face what I'd done. So I stayed away. I sent cards and made calls that were easier than showing up. I told myself Sophie was better off without me than with a mother who'd walked out. She asked me last week if you loved her. Ethan's voice was hard. 7 years old and she's already wondering if her mother cares. You did that, Brooke. Your absence did that. Brooke's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I hate myself for it. Every day I hate myself for it. Then why the custody petition? If you feel so guilty, why are you trying to take her from the one parent who's been there? Because Derek wants a family. Because his parents keep asking when we're going to have children. Because I thought maybe I could fix what I broke by giving Sophie a better life. She wiped at her eyes. And because my therapist says I'm trying to control a situation where I feel powerless. That I'm trying to prove I'm not a terrible mother by winning custody, even though winning custody would make me a terrible mother. Ethan sat back, thrown by the honesty. You're in therapy? For 6 months now, working through why I make the choices I make, why I run from things that scare me, why I hurt people I love. Brooke looked at him directly. You know what I learned? I left you because being poor terrified me. Growing up the way I did, watching my mom struggle, never having enough, I swore I'd never live that life. And then we were living that life and I couldn't handle it. So I found someone who could give me security and I took it. I chose money over love and I've regretted it every day since. That doesn't give you the right to take Sophie. I know, you're right, I know. She took another breath, steadying herself. I'm withdrawing the petition, Ethan. I'm calling off the custody fight. The words hung in the air between them. Ethan wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. What? I talked to Jennifer this morning, told her to file the paperwork to withdraw. The $50,000 offer is off the table. The whole thing is off the table. You keep primary custody. I'm not going to fight you. Ethan's mind struggled to process this. Why? Because you're right. Sophie needs stability and you've given her that. Taking her away from you to satisfy my guilt or Derek's desire for an instant family would be selfish. It would hurt her, and I've hurt her enough. Brooke's voice cracked. I want to be part of her life, Ethan. I want visitation rights. I want to rebuild a relationship with my daughter, but I want to do it the right way, not by ripping her away from the only stable parent she's ever known. This felt like a trap, like Brooke was playing some angle he couldn't see. But looking at her now, crying in a coffee shop, makeup-free and vulnerable, he couldn't see the angle, couldn't see the manipulation, just saw a woman who seemed genuinely broken by her own choices. "How do I know you mean this?" he asked carefully. "How do I know you won't change your mind next week?" "You don't. You have to trust me." She laughed bitterly, which I know is asking a lot considering I've given you zero reason to trust me for the past 2 years. But I'm asking anyway. Let me prove I can be a mother to Sophie. Let me earn back a place in her life. Please. Ethan thought about Grant Maddox's confidence that they could win. Thought about the battle ahead, the court dates, the evaluations, the stress it would put on Sophie. If Brooke was serious about withdrawing, it would save everyone months of pain. But if she wasn't, if this was some tactic to get him to lower his guard, he'd be walking into a disaster. "I need to talk to my lawyer," he said finally. "I need this in writing. I need guarantees that you won't file again in 6 months when you change your mind." "That's fair. Have your lawyer contact Jennifer. We'll work out a formal agreement. Visitation schedule, boundaries, everything documented." Brooke reached across the table like she might take his hand, then thought better of it. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I've destroyed any goodwill between us, but Sophie deserves a mother who tries, even if I have to start from zero. She does deserve that. But Brooke, if you hurt her again, if you make promises you don't keep or disappear when it gets hard, I won't give you another chance. This is it. You get one shot to prove you're serious." "I understand." They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Two people who'd once promised forever to each other, now negotiating the terms of separation. Ethan's coffee sat untouched in front of him, gone cold. Through the window, he could see the city moving, people with places to be, lives to live, problems that didn't involve custody battles and broken families. "How did you end up with a lawyer like Grant Maddox?" Brooke asked suddenly. "Jennifer said he doesn't take clients who can't afford his retainer, which is usually around 50 grand. Ethan hesitated. The truth was complicated and private and none of Brooke's business. But she'd been honest with him, or at least appeared to be. Maybe he owed her the same. "Someone helped me. Someone who believed I deserved a fair fight." "The billionaire who owns your building?" So Brooke knew about Vivian. Probably Jennifer had done research, found the connection. "Yeah." "Why would she do that?" "Because she sees value where other people don't, because she knows what it's like to struggle, because she could." Ethan met Brooke's eyes. "There are people in this world who help because they can, not because they want something in return. You should try it sometime." Brooke flinched at the barb but didn't argue. "I'm glad you found someone in your corner. You deserve that." "I deserve a lot of things I haven't gotten, but I'm learning to accept help when it's offered." They talked for a few more minutes, working out logistics. When Brooke might see Sophie, how they'd communicate, whether supervised visits made sense initially. It was practical and painful, two people trying to co-parent a child they'd made together before everything fell apart. When Ethan finally stood to leave, Brooke stood too. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "I know it was against your lawyer's advice." "It was. My sister thinks I'm an idiot." "Your sister is right, but I'm grateful anyway." Brooke pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. "This is my therapist's number. If you ever need to talk to someone about all of this, about Sophie, about how to help her process everything, Dr. Chen is incredible." Ethan took the card, surprised by the gesture. "Thanks." "I mean it, Ethan. What we put Sophie through with the divorce, what I put her through by leaving, that's going to affect her. Maybe not now, but eventually. Having someone to talk to might help, for both of you." He pocketed the card and left without looking back, his mind spinning. The whole conversation felt surreal. Brooke withdrawing the petition. Brooke apologizing. Brooke actually seeming to care about Sophie's emotional well-being. It was either genuine growth or the best con she'd ever pulled, and Ethan couldn't tell which. He texted Grant Maddox immediately. "Met with Brooke against advice. She says she's withdrawing the petition. Want formal agreement on visitation. Need you to handle." The response came fast. "Ethan, we talked about this. Call me now." Ethan called. Grant answered on the first ring. his voice tight with controlled anger. "What the hell were you thinking?" "She said she wanted to talk. She apologized. She said she's dropping the custody fight." "And you believed her?" "I don't know what I believed. That's why I'm calling you." Ethan found a bench and sat down, exhausted. She seemed genuine, broken even. Said she's been in therapy, realized she was wrong, wants to do right by Sophie. Grant was silent for a moment. "Did you record the conversation?" "No." "Did she?" "She said she wasn't." "Which means nothing." Grant sighed. "Okay, here's what we do. I'll contact Jennifer Moss and confirm Brooke's intention to withdraw. If she's serious, we'll draft a new custody agreement that gives you primary physical and legal custody with specified visitation for Brooke. Everything documented, everything enforceable. If she's not serious, if this was a ploy to get you to lower your guard, we'll know soon enough. And if it was a ploy, then we go to war and we make her regret it. But Ethan, you can't do this again. You can't meet with her without me present. You can't have off-the-record conversations about your daughter's future. Everything has to go through legal channels from now on. Understood?" "Understood." "Good. I'll handle this. You go be a dad. That's your job right now." Ethan hung up and sat on the bench watching the sun sink lower in the sky, painting everything in orange and gold. His phone buzzed again, Marie, asking if he was still alive. He texted back that he was fine, that Brooke had withdrawn the petition, that he'd explain later. Marie's response was a string of skeptical emojis followed by, "I hope you know what you're doing." He didn't. But maybe that was okay. Maybe not knowing, just trying, just showing up and doing his best was enough. The next week passed in a strange limbo. Grant confirmed that Jennifer Moss had filed paperwork to withdraw Brooke's custody petition. The lawyers were drafting a new agreement that would formalize everything: custody, visitation, child support, decision-making authority. It was happening. Brooke was actually following through. But while the legal machinery ground forward, another storm was building. Ethan didn't see it coming until it was too late. It started with an email from Rodriguez. "Need to see you before your shift tonight. My office, 7:30. Ethan showed up 15 minutes early, still in his street clothes, wondering if this was about the time he'd missed for the custody meeting. Rodriguez was behind his desk shuffling papers when Ethan knocked on the doorframe. "Reed, come in. Shut the door." Ethan did, his stomach sinking. The last time Rodriguez had used that tone, it was to tell Jimmy Martinez he was being let go for drinking on the job. Rodriguez didn't waste time. "I'm getting calls, reporters, bloggers, people wanting to know about you and some billionaire who's supposedly your sugar mama." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "Apparently there's a story circulating online. Some gossip site picked it up. They're saying Vivian Sterling is funding your custody battle because you're her kept man, that she's been paying you for sexual favors, that she's got a thing for working-class guys, and you're her latest project." Rodriguez's expression was carefully neutral. "Any of that true?" "No, Jesus, no. Vivian Sterling is helping me because—" Ethan stopped, because explaining Vivian's motivations meant explaining his whole situation, and he wasn't sure Rodriguez needed or wanted to hear it. "She offered me a job, a legitimate job in her company. The custody thing is separate." "Is it?" "Because the story says she's paying for your lawyers, says she's been seen with you multiple times, says you're leveraging her wealth and connections to fight your ex-wife." "My ex-wife tried to buy custody of my daughter for $50,000. Vivian connected me with an attorney who could help me fight back. That's it. There's nothing inappropriate happening." Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. "I believe you, Reed. You're a good guy. You work hard. You don't cause problems. But the company is getting calls. And when the company gets calls about employee misconduct, I have to investigate. So I'm asking you straight. Is there anything about your relationship with Vivian Sterling that could embarrass this company or create liability issues?" "No, sir, I swear there's nothing like that. She's been generous and kind, but it's not romantic, and it's not transactional. She's just helping me because she can." "And you're taking a job with her company?" "I was going to give my 2 weeks' notice this week. Operations supervisor for Sterling Industries. Better pay, better hours, benefits." Rodriguez nodded slowly. Good for you. You deserve better than this place. But Reed, if this story gets bigger, if more media picks it up, you need to be prepared. People are going to make assumptions. They're going to see a poor janitor getting help from a rich woman, and they're going to create narratives that fit their biases. What do I do? Keep your head down. Don't talk to reporters. Don't engage with the story. Let it die on its own. Rodriguez paused. And maybe talk to Vivian Sterling, because if this is hurting her reputation, she needs to know. Ethan left Rodriguez's office feeling sick. He pulled out his phone and searched for his own name. It took 3 tries to get the spelling right in his panicked state, but then there it was. A gossip blog called City Whispers with the headline, Billionaire CEO's Secret Charity Case, Romance or Exploitation. The article was a masterpiece of innuendo and half-truths. It mentioned Vivian's history of aggressive acquisition tactics and questionable business relationships. It quoted anonymous sources saying she'd been seen with a mystery man who worked as a janitor. It speculated about power dynamics and inappropriate workplace relationships. It managed to make something generous look sordid and something innocent look scandalous. And there, embedded in the article, was a photo. Grainy and taken from a distance, but unmistakably, Vivian and Ethan standing on the sidewalk outside Morrison's Coffee. The caption read, Sterling and her alleged paramour in an intimate conversation. Except that wasn't Morrison's. That was the coffee shop where Vivian had first approached him. Someone had been following them, photographing them, building a narrative. Ethan's hand shook as he dialed Vivian's number. She answered immediately. Ethan, I was about to call you. You've seen the article. I've seen 6 articles. City Whispers was just the first. They're multiplying like rabbits. Her voice was calm, but he could hear the tension underneath. How are you holding up? How am I? Vivian, they're saying I'm your kept man. They're saying you're paying me for sex. This is going to destroy everything. The custody case, the job, your reputation. Ethan, stop. Take a breath. He did, forcing air into his lungs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to blow back on you. This isn't your fault. This is someone with an agenda using you to attack me. It happens. I'm used to it. She paused. But we need to manage this carefully. I'm calling an emergency meeting with my PR team tomorrow morning. I need you there. Vivian, maybe I should just back out, turn down the job, handle the custody thing on my own. If I'm not connected to you, the story dies. Absolutely not. That's exactly what whoever started this wants, to isolate you, to make you vulnerable, to take away your support system. Her voice hardened. I don't abandon people, Ethan, especially not when they're being attacked for accepting help they deserve. We face this together, or not at all. But your company? My company will be fine. I've weathered worse than tabloid gossip. What I won't do is let you sacrifice your daughter's future because some blogger with an agenda decided to create a scandal. Ethan felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Okay, tomorrow morning. Where? Sterling Industries, 9 a.m. Bring Grant Maddox if he's available. We need to make sure this doesn't impact the custody situation. After they hung up, Ethan sat in his car in the parking lot of the building where he worked and tried to process what was happening. 24 hours ago, Brooke had been withdrawing her petition, and everything had seemed like it might actually work out. Now someone was trying to destroy Vivian's reputation and his along with it. The timing felt suspicious, too convenient. His phone rang. Grant Maddox. Tell me you haven't talked to any reporters, Grant said without preamble. I haven't talked to anyone except Vivian and my supervisor. Good. Keep it that way. I'm getting calls too. People wanting quotes about the custody case, about your relationship with Sterling, about whether this affects Sophie. Grant's voice was sharp. They're fishing, trying to create more story where there isn't any. Don't give them ammunition. Grant, could Brooke be behind this? Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, what makes you think that? The timing. She withdraws her petition, seems all apologetic and reformed. Then suddenly there's a media circus painting me as some kind of gold digger. It feels coordinated. It's possible. Jennifer Moss has connections to several media outlets. She could have leaked information or suggested angles. Grant paused. but proving it would be difficult and potentially counterproductive. Right now, our focus needs to be damage control, making sure this doesn't give Brooke grounds to claim you're an unfit parent because you're involved in a scandal. Am I involved in a scandal, or is a scandal being invented around me? In the court of public opinion, there's no difference. Perception is reality. Grant's tone softened. Listen, Ethan, you did nothing wrong. Accepting help isn't wrong. Building a better life for your daughter isn't wrong. But we live in a world that loves to tear down anyone who dares to rise above their station. You're going to face scrutiny, judgment, people making assumptions about your character based on headlines they didn't even read past. You need to be ready for that. Ethan thought about Sophie, about walking her to school tomorrow and facing other parents who might have seen the articles, about her teachers and neighbors and everyone in their small world suddenly viewing him through a lens of suspicion and scandal. How do I protect her from this? His voice came out raw. You keep being her father. You keep your routine. You don't let the noise change who you are or how you show up for her. And you trust that truth has a way of winning eventually, even when it takes longer than we'd like. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling while his mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Brooke using the scandal to refile her petition. Vivian deciding he was too much trouble and withdrawing her support. Sophie finding out about the articles and asking questions he didn't know how to answer. The new job offer evaporating. Everything he'd started to hope for crumbling because someone had decided to weaponize generosity. At 3 a.m., he got up and checked on Sophie. She was asleep, peaceful, unaware that her father's world was imploding. He sat on the edge of her bed and watched her breathe, this small, perfect person who depended on him to keep her safe from things she didn't even know existed. I won't let them take you, he whispered. I won't let them win. The morning came gray and cold, rain streaking the windows. Ethan got Sophie ready for school like always, made her breakfast like always, braided her hair like always. Normal routine, normal motions, even though nothing felt normal. At the school gates, another parent, Susan Martinez, whose son was in Sophie's class, gave Ethan a look he couldn't quite read. Sympathy, judgment, curiosity. She opened her mouth like she might say something, then closed it and looked away. Others did the same. The whispers had started. Ethan drove to Sterling Industries with his stomach in knots, walking into the gleaming lobby and taking the elevator to the 28th floor, where Vivian's conference room was full of people in expensive suits, looking serious and focused. Vivian made introductions. The PR director, the head of legal, a crisis management consultant who'd apparently handled scandals for Fortune 500 companies. Grant Maddox arrived 10 minutes late, taking a seat next to Ethan with an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. The PR director, a woman named Carol Chen, with silver hair and shrewd eyes, laid out the situation. 6 articles so far, shared across multiple platforms. Social media picking it up, people taking sides, some defending Vivian's generosity, others attacking her for creating inappropriate relationships with employees. The narrative was fracturing in unpredictable ways. Our recommendation, Carol said, is a limited statement acknowledging that Ms. Sterling has offered employment to Mr. Reed in a legitimate business capacity and that any suggestion of impropriety is false and defamatory. We don't engage beyond that. We don't give it oxygen. And if they keep pushing, Vivian asked, then we evaluate legal options. But usually these things burn out if you don't feed them. Grant leaned forward. What about the custody case? If Brooke's team is behind this, they could use the media attention to claim Ethan's lifestyle is unstable or that he's involved in situations detrimental to Sophie. They could try, Carol said, but the facts don't support it. Ethan accepted a job offer. That's not scandalous, it's responsible. If they want to make it about more than that, they'll need evidence they don't have. The meeting went on for another hour, everyone strategizing and planning and treating Ethan's life like a problem to be solved. He sat there feeling like a spectator at his own disaster, watching people make decisions about his future while he had no real control. Finally, Vivian called a break. The room cleared except for her and Ethan. She poured 2 cups of coffee from the carafe on the sideboard and handed him one. This wasn't what you signed up for, she said quietly. No, it really wasn't. If you want out, I understand. I can recommend you to other companies, help you find something that doesn't come with this level of scrutiny. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. She was tired, he realized. The scandal was taking a toll on her too, even if she was better at hiding it. Do you want me to walk away? I want you to make the choice that's right for you and Sophie, without pressure from me or anyone else. Then I'm staying. I'm taking the job. I'm fighting for my daughter, and I'm not letting some blogger with an agenda dictate my life. He set down the coffee cup. You said you don't abandon people. Well, I don't either. We're in this together. Vivian smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her professional composure. Good, because I'd hate to lose you before you even started. They returned to the conference room where Carol was already drafting the statement, where Grant was preparing responses to potential custody complications, where everyone was mobilizing to protect what mattered. And Ethan, sitting there among lawyers and PR professionals and billion-dollar decision-makers, felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt like he belonged. The feeling of belonging didn't last. By the time Ethan left Sterling Industries that afternoon, his phone was buzzing with notifications he didn't want to read. More articles, more speculation, more strangers on the internet debating his character and motivations like he was a fictional character instead of a real person trying to keep his daughter. Marie called as he was walking to the bus stop. Have you seen Twitter? I don't have Twitter. Good. Keep it that way. People are insane. She paused. But Ethan, some of them are on your side. There's a whole thread about how society punishes poor people for accepting help, about how we're supposed to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But the moment someone offers us actual boots, we're accused of being lazy or corrupt or sleeping our way to the top. That's great, Marie, but it doesn't help me in court if this becomes about my character instead of Sophie's well-being. Grant will handle it. That's what you're paying him for, or what Vivian's paying him for. Whatever. Marie's voice softened. How are you really doing? Ethan stopped walking and leaned against a building, watching the city move around him. I'm terrified. I feel like I'm one mistake away from losing everything, like the universe is testing how much I can take before I break. You're not going to break. You're too stubborn. You get that from Dad. Their father had died when Ethan was 19, worked himself to death literally in a factory that didn't care enough to maintain safe equipment. The stubbornness was real, inherited and earned, but Ethan wasn't sure it was enough against lawyers and money and a system designed to favor people like Brooke over people like him. I need to pick up Sophie, he said. I'll call you later. Sophie was waiting at Marie's apartment, curled up on the couch, watching cartoons. She looked up when Ethan walked in and immediately knew something was wrong. Kids had that radar, could sense tension in adults the way animals sensed storms coming. Daddy, why do you look sad? Ethan sat down next to her and pulled her into a hug. Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about. Is it about Mom? You should have known she'd make that connection. Sophie was 7, but she wasn't stupid. Yeah, baby, it's about your mom. But it's going to be okay. I promise. Are you and Mom going to get back together? The question surprised him. No, sweetheart. Your mom and I aren't going to get back together. We're going to be friends, hopefully, and we both love you very much, but we're not going to be married again. Good. Sophie nestled against his chest. I like it being just you and me. You and me and Aunt Marie. That's our family. Ethan's throat tightened. That's right. That's our family. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan did something he'd been avoiding. He read the articles, all of them, sat on his couch with his laptop, and forced himself through every word of speculation and judgment, every comment section full of strangers debating his worth as a person and a father. Some of it was brutal. People calling him a gold digger, a user, questioning what he'd done to earn Vivian Sterling's attention. Some of it was supportive, defending his right to accept help, pointing out the double standard of how society treated struggling fathers versus struggling mothers. And some of it was just noise, people with too much time and not enough empathy turning someone else's pain into entertainment. What struck him most was how little any of it actually knew. The articles didn't know about the nights he'd gone to bed hungry so Sophie could have seconds, didn't know about the times he'd cried in the bathroom at work because he was so tired he could barely stand, didn't know about the love and fear and desperation that went into every choice he made. They saw a poor man accepting help from a rich woman and filled in the blanks with their own biases and assumptions. His phone rang. Vivian. I know I told you not to read the articles, she said without preamble. How did you know I was reading them? Because I am too, and because you strike me as someone who faces problems head on, even when it hurts. She paused. Carol wants to do a follow-up statement, something more personal. Your story, in your own words, show people the truth behind the headlines. No. The word came out harder than Ethan intended. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm not making my daughter's life public fodder. I'm not turning our struggle into a PR campaign. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting we control the narrative before someone else does. Tell the story on your terms. The story is nobody's business. Sophie is nobody's business. All that matters is what happens in court, and Grant says the media circus won't affect that as long as I keep my head down. Vivian was quiet for a moment. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking like a CEO instead of like someone who cares about your family. Ignore Carol's suggestion. We'll handle this the way you want to handle it. Thank you. Ethan, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you regret accepting my help? If you could go back to that day in the coffee shop, knowing what you know now, would you still say yes? Ethan thought about it, about the job offer that had changed his prospects, about Grant Maddox and the legal representation that had given him a fighting chance, about feeling, for the first time in years, like someone saw his worth. Yeah, he said quietly. I'd still say yes. The media stuff is awful, but it's temporary. The difference you've made in my life, that's permanent. Sophie gets to keep her father because of you. That's worth any amount of gossip. Good, because I'd make the same offer again in a heartbeat. They talked for a few more minutes about logistics. His start date at Sterling Industries was now 2 weeks away, pending resolution of the custody situation. Vivian had arranged for him to shadow the current operations supervisor to learn the systems and processes. Everything was moving forward despite the chaos. After they hung up, Ethan closed his laptop and sat in the dark thinking about tomorrow. About the meeting Grant had scheduled to finalize the custody agreement with Brooke and Jennifer Moss. About whether Brooke's apparent change of heart was genuine or just another manipulation he couldn't see through. The meeting was set for 10 a.m. at Grant's office. Ethan arrived early, wearing his button-down shirt and khakis, his work boots replaced with the cheap dress shoes he'd bought at a discount store. Grant was already there, papers spread across the conference table, his expression serious. Before they get here, we need to talk, Grant said. Jennifer called me this morning. She's bringing new concerns to the table. Ethan's stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? She says Brooke has received information that you're planning to move, that the new job with Sterling Industries requires relocation, that you're going to take Sophie away from the area where Brooke lives, making visitation difficult. That's not true. The job is local. All the properties I'd be supervising are in the metro area. I know, but Jennifer's claiming that Sterling Industries has operations nationwide and that you could be transferred at any time, which would disrupt Brooke's relationship with Sophie. Grant leaned back in his chair. It's a reach. A desperate reach. But it's the kind of thing that could complicate negotiations if the judge gets involved. So what do? We get it in writing. As part of the custody agreement, you commit to remaining in the metro area unless both parties agree to relocation. That protects Brooke's visitation rights and removes her objection. I was planning to stay here anyway. Sophie's school is here, Marie is here, our whole life is here. Then agreeing to it costs you nothing and removes their leverage. Brooke and Jennifer arrived at 10 on the dot. Brooke looked different than she had at Morrison's Coffee, more composed, more like her old self. The vulnerability Ethan had seen was hidden behind professional polish. She wore a navy dress and heels, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. Jennifer was beside her in a gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent used to be. They sat across the table. Grant made the introductions formal and cold, establishing the professional distance that would govern this conversation. Then Jennifer pulled out her documents and the negotiation began. The relocation clause was just the start. Jennifer had a list of concerns: Sophie's schooling, medical decisions, religious upbringing, extracurricular activities. She wanted Brooke to have input on major decisions, wanted a structured visitation schedule that started slow and built over time, wanted provisions for holidays and birthdays and summers. Some of it was reasonable. Some of it felt like Jennifer trying to justify her billable hours by making simple things complicated. Grant pushed back on the overreach, agreed to the reasonable requests, and slowly they built a framework that could work. Through it all, Brooke was quiet. She let Jennifer do the talking, occasionally nodding or adding a soft clarification, but mostly just watching Ethan with an expression he couldn't read. Regret, maybe. Or calculation. He'd stopped being able to tell the difference. After 2 hours, they had a draft agreement. Primary physical and legal custody to Ethan. Supervised visitation for Brooke starting with 2 hours every other Saturday. Building to unsupervised visits and then overnights over a 6-month period. Joint decision-making on major medical and educational issues, with Ethan having final say in cases of disagreement. Commitment from Ethan to remain in the metro area. Child support from Brooke, a modest amount that reflected her income and Ethan's new financial stability. "We'll need a few days to review," Jennifer said, gathering her papers. "We'll need your review complete by Friday," Grant countered. "My client has been in limbo long enough. We're finalizing this week or we're going to court and letting a judge decide." Jennifer's expression hardened, but she nodded. "Friday. We'll have our response by Friday." As they stood to leave, Brooke finally spoke directly to Ethan. "Can I talk to you for a minute? Alone?" Grant started to object, but Ethan held up a hand. "It's fine. Just a minute." They stepped into the hallway while the lawyers stayed in the conference room. Brooke leaned against the wall, her professional composure cracking slightly. "I know you don't trust me. I know I've given you every reason not to, but I need you to know I'm serious about this, about being part of Sophie's life the right way." Then why all the legal maneuvering? The relocation clause, the decision-making provisions? If you're serious about co-parenting, why make this a battle? "Because Jennifer convinced me I need to protect my rights, that you might shut me out completely if I don't have legal recourse. And maybe she's right. Maybe I do need those protections because I destroyed your trust, and now everything has to be documented and enforceable." Brooke's eyes filled with tears. "I hate this. I hate that we've come to this, but I hate myself more for causing it." Ethan wanted to feel sympathy, wanted to believe this was genuine remorse and growth, but he'd believed Brooke before, believed she loved him, believed they'd build a life together, believed she'd be there through hard times, and she'd proven him wrong on every count. "I'm going to hold you to this agreement," he said quietly. "Every word of it. And if you disappoint Sophie again, if you make promises you don't keep, the supervised visitation goes away and you get nothing. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." "Good. Then let's get this done so we can all move on." Friday came. Jennifer sent the signed agreement with minimal changes. Grant reviewed it, Ethan signed it, and just like that, the immediate crisis was resolved. The custody agreement was formalized. Brooke would start supervised visits in 2 weeks. The framework for co-parenting was established. But Ethan didn't feel relief. He felt exhausted and wary, like he'd won a battle but the war wasn't over. Grant seemed to sense it. "This is good, Ethan. This is what we wanted. Stability, clear boundaries, your custody protected." "Then why do I feel like something's wrong?" "Because you've been in survival mode for so long that security feels unfamiliar. Give it time. Let yourself believe this is real." That weekend, Ethan took Sophie to the park. Same rusty playground, same benches, same bodega on the corner where he'd charged his phone that rainy day when everything started. But Sophie was different now. Happier, more secure. She ran to the swings without the cautious glances she used to give him, checking to make sure he was still there, still present. "Push me higher, Daddy." He pushed, watching her soar, her laughter cutting through the autumn air. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it. This moment mattered more than whatever message waited. Later, when Sophie was occupied on the monkey bars, he checked his phone. Text from an unknown number. "This is Derek Hale. We need to talk about my wife." Ethan's jaw clenched. He should delete it, should block the number, should follow Grant's advice about not engaging with Brooke's side without legal representation. But something made him respond. "Brooke isn't your concern anymore. We have a legal agreement. Leave us alone." The response came immediately. "That's what I'm trying to do, but you need to know something about the media stories, about who was really behind them." Ethan stared at the message, his stomach sinking. "What are you talking about?" "Meet me." 1 hour. Same coffee shop where you met Brooke. I have information you need to hear. It was a trap. Had to be a trap. But Ethan found himself texting Marie, asking her to watch Sophie, heading to Morrison's Coffee with his heart pounding and Grant's warnings echoing in his head. Derek was already there when Ethan arrived. He looked older than in the custody meeting, tired around the eyes, his expensive suit somehow less impressive in the afternoon light. He stood when Ethan approached. "Thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes. Talk." Derek gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit. This isn't what you think." Ethan sat, keeping his body language defensive, his guard up. "You said you have information. What information?" "About the gossip articles. The ones suggesting you and Vivian Sterling were having an inappropriate relationship." Derek's expression was grave. "I'm the one who leaked those stories. I hired the photographers. I fed information to the bloggers. It was all me." The confession hit like a physical blow. Ethan's hands clenched into fists on the table. "Why?" "Because I'm an insecure asshole who couldn't handle my wife prioritizing her daughter over my image. Because when Brooke told me she was withdrawing the custody petition, that she wanted to rebuild her relationship with Sophie instead of fighting you in court, I felt like she was choosing you over me. So I tried to destroy you both." Derek's voice was flat, emotionless. "I thought if Ethan looked like a con artist and Vivian looked like someone who exploited employees, Brooke would have no choice but to go back to fighting for custody, that I'd win by making everyone else lose." "You're admitting this why? Guilty conscience?" "Because Brooke found out. She found the emails, the receipts for the private investigator, everything, and she's leaving me. Filed for divorce yesterday." Derek laughed bitterly. "She said she'd rather be alone than married to someone who'd weaponized gossip against her daughter's father. Said I was petty and cruel and exactly the kind of person she never wanted to be." Ethan should have felt satisfaction. Should have felt vindicated. Instead, he just felt tired. "What do you want from me? Forgiveness? Absolution?" "I want to give you this." Derek pulled a folder from his bag and slid it across the table. "Copies of everything, proof that I orchestrated the media attack. Names of the bloggers I paid, copies of the photographs, email chains showing how I coordinated the whole thing. If you want to sue me for defamation, you have everything you need." Ethan opened the folder. Page after page of damning evidence. Invoices from a private investigator, emails to gossip bloggers with suggested angles and talking points, payment records showing money changing hands. It was thorough and devastating and exactly what he'd need to destroy Derek legally and financially. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because Brooke asked me to. Because she said if I had any decency left, I'd own what I did and give you the tools to make it right." Derek met Ethan's eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I owe you the truth and the means to repair the damage I caused." Ethan closed the folder, his mind racing. He could use this. Could go after Derek for defamation, for intentional infliction of emotional distress, for every legal remedy Grant could think of. Could make Derek pay for the pain and stress and public humiliation. Could win in a way that felt satisfying and complete. Or he could let it go. Could take the evidence, file it away, and move forward without dragging himself and Vivian and Sophie through more legal battles and media attention. "I need to think about this," Ethan said finally. "I need to talk to my lawyer and to Vivian before I decide what to do." "That's fair, but Ethan, whatever you decide, I want you to know I'm sorry, truly sorry. What I did was unconscionable. You didn't deserve it. Neither did Vivian Sterling. I let my ego and insecurity turn me into someone I hate." "Yeah, you did." Ethan stood, taking the folder with him. "Stay away from me. Stay away from Brooke. Stay away from my daughter. If I see you or hear from you again outside of legal proceedings, I'll make sure every page of this folder ends up in the hands of journalists who will actually care about the truth." He walked out without looking back, the folder heavy in his hands, his mind spinning with implications and possibilities. Called Vivian from the sidewalk. "We need to meet, tonight if possible. Derek just gave me everything we need to prove he orchestrated the media attack." Vivian's voice sharpened. "Where are you?" "Morrison's Coffee. He met me here. Confessed everything. Gave me documentation." Don't move, I'm 20 minutes away. She arrived in 15, stepping out of a town car with her professional armor fully in place. They sat in her car while Ethan walked her through the conversation, showed her the folder's contents, explained Derek's motivations, and Brooke's response. Vivian read through the documents with increasing fury, her jaw tight, her eyes hard. When she finished, she closed the folder carefully. We could destroy him with this. Financially, professionally, personally. Sue him into oblivion. I know. But you're hesitating. Why? Ethan looked out the window at the coffee shop where this whole strange journey had started. Because revenge won't change what happened. Won't undo the damage. It'll just keep us trapped in this mess, fighting battles that don't matter while Sophie watches her father become someone she doesn't recognize. So you want to do nothing? Let him get away with it? I want to do what's right for Sophie. What's right for my future. What's right for the person I'm trying to become. Ethan turned to face Vivian. You gave me a chance to build a better life. I don't want to waste that chance on anger and litigation. I want to move forward. Vivian studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her professional reserve. You're a better person than I am. I'd want blood. Maybe I'll want blood tomorrow, but today I just want to be done with this. Want to start my new job and co-parent with Brooke and give Sophie the stable life she deserves. Derek can live with what he did. That's punishment enough. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city move around them. Finally, Vivian spoke. Keep the folder. File it somewhere safe. If Derek ever comes after you or Sophie or tries to interfere again, you'll have what you need. But otherwise, let it go. Focus on your future. That's the plan. Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. I have a board meeting in an hour, but Ethan, I'm proud of you for how you handled this, for choosing wisdom over vengeance, for being the kind of father Sophie can look up to. Thank you for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing I deserved better, for not giving up on me when things got complicated. You made it easy. You're worth investing in. She dropped him at Marie's apartment where Sophie was watching cartoons and eating apple slices. Marie took one look at his face and pulled him aside. What happened? Ethan told her everything, Derek's confession, the folder of evidence, his decision to let it go. Marie listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through anger, disbelief, and finally, reluctant respect. You're sure about this? About not going after him? I'm sure. I'm tired of fighting, Marie. Tired of being angry. I just want to live my life. Okay. Then we let it go. She hugged him tight. I'm proud of you, little brother. You're handling this better than I would. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan sat on his couch with Derek's folder open in front of him. Read through every page one more time, feeling the anger and hurt and betrayal wash over him. Let himself feel it fully, completely, without trying to suppress or rationalize. Then he closed the folder, put it in his filing cabinet, and decided to let it rest. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Ethan worked his final shifts at the janitorial company, saying goodbye to coworkers who seemed genuinely happy for his success. Rodriguez shook his hand and told him he'd been one of the best employees they'd ever had. The night crew threw him a small party with grocery store cake and sincere wishes for his future. He spent his days shadowing Patricia Chen, learning the systems and procedures of his new role, meeting the maintenance supervisors who'd be reporting to him. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying in equal measure. Every day he worried he'd be exposed as a fraud, that someone would realize he didn't belong in an office with business cards and budget authority. But slowly, he started to believe he could do this, started to see how his years of janitorial work had actually prepared him. He understood buildings, understood maintenance issues, understood the people who did the actual physical work. He brought perspective that college-educated supervisors sometimes lacked. On his last day as a janitor, Ethan cleaned the Meridian building one final time, walked the familiar hallways, scrubbed the familiar bathrooms, emptied the familiar trash bins. It was bittersweet, grateful to be leaving, but aware that this job had kept him and Sophie alive through the hardest years. He found himself on the 17th floor, standing in the hallway outside Hamilton and Cross law offices where this had all begun. The reception area was dark, the office closed for the night, But Ethan stood there, remembering that terrible meeting, Brooke's cruel confidence, Jennifer Moss's sharp eyes cataloging his failures. He'd been so broken that day, so convinced he was about to lose everything. And now here he was, transformed not because he'd changed who he was, but because someone had seen who he'd always been and decided it was worth nurturing. His phone buzzed, text from Vivian. First day tomorrow. You ready? As ready as I'll ever be. You'll be great. Trust yourself. Ethan pocketed his phone, took one last look at the law office, and headed home to his daughter and his future and the life he'd fought so hard to build. Tomorrow, everything would change again. But this time, he was ready. Tomorrow came faster than Ethan expected. He woke up at 5:30, an hour before his alarm, his mind already racing through everything that could go wrong on his first day. He made coffee in the dark kitchen, watching the city wake up through his window, and tried to convince himself he belonged in the world he was about to enter. Sophie shuffled out of her bedroom at 6, rubbing her eyes. Daddy? Why are you up so early? Big day, sweetheart, first day at the new job. She climbed into his lap, still warm from sleep. Are you scared? A little bit. Is that okay? Yeah, I get scared on the first day of school too, but then it gets better. She looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. You're going to be great, Daddy. You're the best at everything. Ethan held her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling the absolute trust radiating from this small person who believed he could do anything. Thank you, baby. I needed to hear that. He got Sophie ready for school, made her breakfast, braided her hair with hands that were steadier than he felt, walked her to the bus stop and watched her climb aboard, her backpack bouncing, her wave enthusiastic. Then he headed to Sterling Industries, his heart pounding harder with each step. The building looked different walking in as an employee. The security guard greeted him by name. His badge granted him access to elevators and floors. His presence was expected and legitimate. He rode up to the operations floor feeling like an actor playing a role, waiting for someone to yell "cut" and reveal it was all a mistake. Patricia Chen was waiting at his office. His office, small but real, with his name on a placard outside the door. She smiled when she saw him. First day jitters? Is it that obvious? You look like you're about to face a firing squad. Relax, you know this work. You've been doing it for years, just from a different angle. She handed him a tablet. Today we're doing site visits. I want you to meet the maintenance supervisors at each property, see the operations firsthand, start building relationships. Sound good? Yeah, that sounds good. They spent the day driving between buildings, Ethan meeting the people who'd be reporting to him, seeing familiar spaces from new perspectives. At the Meridian building, he ran into Rodriguez in the loading dock. His former supervisor did a double take. Reed? Holy shit, man. Look at you. Ethan was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, carrying a tablet instead of a mop bucket. The transformation was jarring even to him. Hey, Rodriguez, how's the crew? Down a good worker since you left. But I'm glad for you. This is where you should have been all along. Rodriguez extended his hand. Congratulations. You earned it. The words meant more than Ethan expected. He shook Rodriguez's hand, feeling the calluses that matched his own. The solidarity of people who worked with their hands, whether they carried mops or tablets. Thanks. That means a lot. By the end of the day, Ethan was exhausted but energized. He'd met dozens of people, toured 15 buildings, started to understand the scope of his new responsibilities. It was overwhelming but manageable, challenging but not impossible. Vivian caught him in the hallway as he was leaving. How was day one? Good, really good. Patricia's an excellent teacher, and the crew seems solid. I knew you'd do well. Same time tomorrow? Same time tomorrow. He picked up Sophie from after-school care, took her to McDonald's like he'd promised, listened to her chatter about her day while his mind processed everything he'd learned. When they got home, Sophie had homework and Ethan had documentation to review for tomorrow's meetings. They sat at the kitchen table together, both working, both content in the ordinary routine of a weeknight. His phone buzzed. Text from Grant Maddox. Brooke's first supervised visit is scheduled for Saturday at 10 a.m. Visitation Center on Maple Street. You okay with that? Ethan's stomach tightened, but he typed back, Yeah, we'll be there. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. The kind of November day that promised winter wasn't far behind. Ethan dressed Sophie in her favorite purple sweater, braided her hair, tried to read her mood as they drove to the visitation center. "Are you nervous about seeing your mom?" Sophie was quiet for a moment, staring out the window. "A little. What if she doesn't like me anymore?" "Baby, your mom loves you. She's always loved you. She just made some mistakes about how to show it. Do you think she's going to stay this time, or is she going to leave again?" The question broke Ethan's heart. 7 years old and already protecting herself from disappointment, already learning that adults made promises they didn't keep. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to make sure she doesn't hurt you again. If she can't be consistent and present, then the visits will stop. I promise you that." The visitation center was a converted community center with bright murals on the walls and toys scattered across a carpeted play area. A social worker named Mrs. Patterson greeted them at the door, her smile warm and professional. "You must be Sophie. I'm Mrs. Patterson. Your mom is already here, waiting in the playroom. Are you ready to see her?" Sophie looked at Ethan, seeking reassurance. He squeezed her hand. "I'll be right here the whole time, okay? Right on the other side of that window. If you need me, just wave." Sophie nodded and followed Mrs. Patterson through a door that led to the visitation room. Ethan moved to the observation area, a small room with a one-way mirror that let him watch without being seen. Brooke was sitting on a mat surrounded by toys, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, less polished than usual, more like the woman Ethan had married than the stranger who'd tried to buy custody. Sophie entered cautiously. Brooke's face lit up. "Hi, baby. I've missed you so much." "Hi, Mom." The formality in Sophie's voice was painful to hear. Brooke seemed to feel it too, her smile faltering slightly. "Do you want to play with these blocks? I thought we could build a castle." For the next 2 hours, Ethan watched his ex-wife and his daughter navigate the awkward terrain of rebuilding a relationship. Brooke was trying, genuinely trying, asking Sophie about school and friends, listening to her answers, following her lead in play. Sophie remained guarded but gradually warmed, her responses growing longer, her smiles more genuine. Mrs. Patterson took notes, documenting the interaction with professional detachment. When the visit ended, Brooke hugged Sophie goodbye and Ethan saw tears in her eyes that she quickly blinked away. In the car, Sophie was quiet. Ethan waited, giving her space to process. "She's different than I remember," Sophie finally said. "Different how?" "Nicer. She asked me questions and really listened, and she didn't check her phone even once." Sophie paused. "Do you think she means it? About wanting to be my mom again?" "I think she's trying. Whether she can sustain it long term, we'll see. But for now, she showed up and she tried. That's a start." The visits continued over the next month. Every other Saturday, 2 hours at the visitation center, Brooke showing up on time and engaged, Sophie slowly lowering her walls. Mrs. Patterson's reports were consistently positive. Grant began preparing the paperwork to transition to unsupervised visits. Meanwhile, Ethan settled into his new role at Sterling Industries. The learning curve was steep, but manageable. He discovered he had instincts for management, an ability to read people and situations that served him well in navigating the complex dynamics of building operations. Patricia praised his progress. His direct reports responded to his leadership style, appreciating that he understood their work from experience rather than theory. 6 weeks into the new job, Vivian called Ethan into her office. He'd seen her around the building, but their interactions remained professional, carefully maintaining the boundaries she'd established. This summons made him nervous. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "We need to talk about something important." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Is there a problem with my work?" "The opposite. You're exceeding expectations across the board. Patricia wants to accelerate your training, give you more responsibility sooner than originally planned." Vivian leaned back in her chair. "But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Are you happy here? Is this work fulfilling for you, or are you just grateful to have a job that pays well?" The question surprised him. "Both? I'm grateful, absolutely, but I also love the work. I love solving problems and managing teams and seeing buildings run efficiently. I love that I'm using my experience in ways that matter." "Good, because I have a proposition for you." Vivian pulled out a folder. Sterling Industries is acquiring a portfolio of properties in the tri-state area, older buildings that need significant operational improvements. I want you to lead the integration project, assessing the current operations, implementing our standards, training new staff. It would mean more travel, more responsibility, and a significant raise. But it would also mean longer hours and more stress. Given your custody situation with Sophie, I need to know if you're interested before I offer it officially. Ethan's mind raced. More money, more responsibility, more opportunity for growth, but also less time with Sophie, more complications with the custody schedule, more risk of something going wrong. Can I think about it? Take a week? Talk to your sister, your lawyer, Brooke, if necessary. This is a big decision, and it needs to be right for your whole life, not just your career. That night, Ethan talked to Marie about the offer. She listened carefully, asked good questions, didn't tell him what to do. "What does your gut say?" she finally asked. "My gut says I want it, says I can handle it, says Sophie's stable enough now that I can take on more without it hurting her." "Then trust your gut. You've earned the right to build a career, not just survive." He talked to Grant, who reviewed the custody agreement and confirmed that increased work travel wouldn't violate any terms as long as Brooke's visitation schedule remained consistent. He even talked to Brooke, awkwardly explaining the opportunity and asking if she'd be willing to be more flexible with the visitation schedule to accommodate occasional work travel. Brooke's response surprised him. "Of course. Ethan, I want you to succeed. I want Sophie to see her father thriving and growing. If that means I need to adjust sometimes, I'm happy to do it." At the end of the week, Ethan accepted Vivian's offer. The new role came with a title change, Director of Property Integration, and a salary that felt almost absurd compared to where he'd been a few months ago. More importantly, it came with the recognition that he was building something real, a career that mattered, a future that extended beyond just survival. December arrived with the first snow. The city transformed into something almost magical, lights and decorations softening the hard edges. Sophie's 8th birthday was coming up, and for the first time in years, Ethan had the resources to make it special. He planned a party at a bowling alley, invited Sophie's whole class, bought a cake from an actual bakery instead of the grocery store. Brooke asked if she could attend, and Ethan, after consulting with Sophie, agreed. The party was chaotic and joyful, children running wild, pizza everywhere, Sophie glowing with happiness. Brooke showed up with a carefully chosen gift, a science kit Sophie had mentioned wanting, and stayed in the background, helping when needed but not trying to take over. At one point, Ethan found himself standing next to her, watching Sophie bowl with her friends. "She's happy," Brooke said quietly. "Really, genuinely happy. You did that. You gave her stability and love and everything she needed." "We both gave her things. I gave her presents. You're giving her the chance to have 2 parents instead of 1. I don't deserve your generosity." "Maybe not. But Sophie deserves parents who can be civil and cooperative, so we figure it out." Brooke smiled, sad and grateful. "Thank you for giving me another chance, for not shutting me out completely." "Don't thank me yet. Keep showing up, keep being consistent. Earn it." "I will, I promise." Christmas came and went. Ethan and Sophie spent Christmas Eve together, just the 2 of them, making cookies and watching movies and falling asleep on the couch, tangled up together. Christmas Day, Sophie went to Brooke's house for a few hours. Now unsupervised visits, a milestone they'd reached after 3 months of successful supervised time. Ethan spent those hours at Marie's, helping her cook dinner, trying not to worry about whether Brooke would actually bring Sophie back on time. She did. Right at 6 p.m., like they'd agreed, Sophie full of stories about opening presents with her mom and Derek. No, not Derek anymore, just Mom, because Brooke had finalized her divorce and was living alone in a modest apartment, rebuilding her life just like Ethan had rebuilt his. The new year arrived with possibility and promise. January brought the official start of Ethan's new role, traveling to assess properties, meeting with maintenance teams across 3 states, implementing systems and standards that would improve operations. The work was challenging and exhausting and deeply satisfying. He was good at it, really good. The crews responded to his leadership because he understood their work, spoke their language, respected their expertise. The buildings improved under his management, operations becoming more efficient, costs decreasing while quality increased. Vivian noticed, Patricia noticed, everyone noticed. In February, Ethan got a call from Grant. "We need to meet. Something's come up with the custody situation." Ethan's stomach clenched with familiar dread. What now? Nothing bad. Actually, Brooke wants to modify the agreement. She's requesting more time with Sophie. They met at Grant's office, this time without the tension and animosity of previous meetings. Brooke sat across from Ethan, no lawyer beside her, just her and Grant and Ethan working out the details. "I've been consistent for 4 months," Brooke said. "I haven't missed a single visit. I've been early more often than late. The supervised period ended 6 weeks ago, and the unsupervised visits are going well. I want to increase my time with Sophie, move from every other weekend to alternating weeks." Ethan's first instinct was to say no, to protect his time with Sophie, to maintain control. But he looked at Brooke and saw someone who'd genuinely changed, who'd done the work, who'd earned the chance to be more than a weekend parent. "What does Sophie want?" he asked. "I asked her last weekend. She said she'd like to spend more time with me, but only if you think it's okay. She doesn't want to hurt your feelings." That was so Sophie, trying to take care of everyone else's emotions at 7 years old. "Let me talk to her. If she wants this, really wants this, I'll agree to the modification. But Brooke, if you screw this up, if you start missing time or being inconsistent, we go back to every other weekend. Immediately. No second chances." "I understand, and I won't screw it up." That night, Ethan talked to Sophie, sat her down on the couch, and asked her directly what she wanted. "I like spending time with Mom," Sophie said carefully. "She's fun now, and she listens to me, and she makes me feel special. But I don't want to miss time with you. You're my favorite person in the whole world." Ethan's heart swelled. "Baby, you're not going to miss time with me. I'm always going to be here, always going to be your dad. Whether you're with me every day or every other week, that doesn't change." "So you think I should spend more time with Mom?" "I think you should spend time with whoever makes you happy and treats you well. And it sounds like Mom is doing both those things now. So yeah, if you want more time with her, I support that." The modified custody agreement went into effect in March. Suddenly, Ethan had full weeks without Sophie, quiet evenings in his apartment that felt too empty, routines disrupted by her absence. It was harder than he expected, the not seeing her every day. But those weeks when he did have her felt more intentional, more present. He wasn't just going through the motions of survival. He was actively parenting, creating memories, building a relationship that would last beyond childhood. And Sophie thrived with the new arrangement. Having both parents actively involved, both showing up consistently, gave her a security she'd never had before. Her grades improved. Her friendships deepened. She started playing soccer and taking piano lessons, activities they couldn't have afforded before, but that now fit easily into the budget. Spring brought another change. Vivian called Ethan into her office on a Thursday afternoon, her expression serious. "I need to tell you something before it becomes public knowledge. Sterling Industries is going through a restructuring. We're consolidating some divisions, expanding others, bringing in new leadership at the executive level." Ethan's stomach dropped. Restructuring usually meant layoffs. "Am I being let go?" "What? No, God no, you're being promoted." Vivian slid a document across her desk. "Vice President of Operations. You'd oversee all property management for Sterling Industries nationwide. Manage a team of regional directors. Report directly to me. It's a massive increase in responsibility and compensation. And before you ask, yes, you're qualified. Yes, you've earned it. Yes, I'm sure." Ethan stared at the job description, the salary figure that seemed impossible, the scope of responsibility that terrified and excited him in equal measure. "I don't have a college degree. I was a janitor 8 months ago. And now you're one of the most effective operational leaders in my company. Education matters, Ethan, but competence matters more. You've proven your competence repeatedly. Now I'm asking you to step up and lead at a higher level. Will you do it?" He thought about the man who'd stood in that law office 9 months ago, broken and desperate, convinced he was about to lose everything. Thought about the journey from there to here, the people who'd helped him, the chances he'd taken, the person he'd become. "Yes," he said, "I'll do it." The promotion was announced company-wide in April. Ethan received congratulations from colleagues, respect from people who'd initially doubted whether someone without traditional credentials could succeed at this level, recognition that he'd earned his place through merit and results. He called his mother in Florida to tell her the news. Linda Reed cried, actual tears of pride and joy, telling him his father would be so proud, that she was so proud, that he'd overcome more obstacles than most people faced in a lifetime. He told Marie, who screamed into the phone and demanded they celebrate immediately. They went to a nice restaurant, the kind with cloth napkins and wine lists, and toasted to dreams that came true when you refused to give up. He told Sophie, who didn't fully understand what vice president meant, but knew it was important because Daddy was smiling more than usual. Does this mean we're rich now? It means we're stable. It means you'll never have to worry about whether we can afford things you need. It means Daddy worked really hard and it paid off. I'm proud of you, Daddy. Thank you, baby. That means everything. In May, nearly a year after everything started, Ethan sat in family court one final time. Not for a custody battle or modification, but for a routine review, the last formality in transitioning from supervised to fully independent co-parenting. The judge, the same woman who'd overseen the previous proceedings, reviewed the case file with evident satisfaction. It's rare that I see cases resolve this positively. Mr. Reed, Ms. Hale, you've both demonstrated remarkable commitment to your daughter's well-being. The alternating week schedule is working well by all accounts. Sophie is thriving academically and socially. You've established effective communication and cooperation. I'm approving the final modification and closing this case. She signed the paperwork with a flourish. Congratulations. You've given Sophie what every child deserves, two parents who put her first. Keep doing what you're doing. Outside the courtroom, Brooke turned to Ethan. We did it. We actually figured it out. Yeah, we did. Can I ask you something? Do you forgive me? For leaving? For trying to take Sophie? For everything? Ethan considered the question carefully. I'm working on it. Some days I'm closer than others. But I don't hate you anymore. I don't resent you. I'm grateful that Sophie has a mother who's present now, even if it took longer than it should have. That's enough. That's more than enough. Thank you. They parted ways, two people who'd loved each other once and hurt each other deeply, now navigating the complex terrain of shared parenthood with grace they'd had to learn the hard way. That weekend was Ethan's with Sophie. They went to the park, the same one where they'd gone so many times before. Sophie ran to the swings, older now, more coordinated, able to pump her legs and create her own momentum. Watch me, Daddy. I can go super high now. Ethan watched, marveling at how much she'd grown in the past year, how much they'd both grown. His phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Dinner next week? I have someone I want you to meet. Margaret Chen's daughter runs a nonprofit helping single parents. Thought you might have insights to share. He smiled and texted back agreement. This was his life now, not just surviving but contributing, not just receiving help but offering it, not just building a career but building connections and community. Daddy, are you watching? I'm watching, sweetheart. You're amazing. Sophie flew higher on the swing, her laughter echoing across the playground, her joy pure and uncomplicated. And Ethan stood there in the spring sunshine, watching his daughter soar, and felt something he'd almost given up on ever feeling again. Peace. He'd been a janitor who'd faced losing everything. He'd been helped by a stranger who saw value where others saw invisibility. He'd fought for his daughter and won. He'd built a career from nothing, climbed from poverty to prosperity, transformed his life through persistence and the willingness to accept help when it was offered. But more than any of that, he'd learned something fundamental, that worth wasn't measured by job titles or bank accounts, that dignity belonged to everyone regardless of their circumstances, that the people society rendered invisible were often the ones with the most to offer. He'd been seen. And in being seen, he'd learned to see others. That evening, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan pulled out the business card Vivian had given him that first night, the one he'd kept all these months. He ran his thumb over the embossed letters, remembering the desperation and fear of that moment. Then he put the card away and pulled out his own business card. Director of Operations, Sterling Industries, his name printed in clean professional font. Evidence that he'd earned his place, that he belonged, that he'd become the person he'd always had the potential to be. His phone rang. Grant Maddox. Ethan, I have news. Derek's filed for bankruptcy. The divorce settlement cleaned him out, and apparently he made some bad business decisions trying to recover. He's lost everything. Ethan should have felt satisfaction, should have felt vindicated. Instead, he just felt tired. Thanks for letting me know, but Grant, I don't want updates on Derek anymore. He's not part of my life. He's not relevant to Sophie's future. Let him go. Understood. Consider it done. They hung up, and Ethan sat in his quiet apartment thinking about revenge and justice and letting go. Derek had orchestrated a media attack meant to destroy him, had manipulated and schemed and tried to win through cruelty. And in the end, Derek had destroyed himself while Ethan had built something lasting. That was justice enough. The next morning, Ethan made Sophie pancakes, walked her to school, kissed her goodbye, and headed to Sterling Industries headquarters. Rode the elevator to the executive floor where his new office waited, larger and brighter, with a view of the city that reminded him how far he'd climbed. Vivian caught him in the hallway, coffee in hand, her professional armor in place. Ready for your first week as VP? Terrified and excited in equal measure. Good. That means you're challenging yourself. She paused. Ethan, I want you to know something. When I first offered you help, I believed you had potential, but you've exceeded every expectation. You've proven that investing in people, really seeing them and believing in them, creates returns that can't be measured in spreadsheets. Thank you for that. Thank you for taking the chance, for seeing me when I felt invisible. You were never invisible. You just needed someone to tell you that you mattered. She walked away, and Ethan entered his office, sat at his desk, and started his work. The work of leading and managing and building. The work of proving that second chances, when earned and honored, could transform lives. 6 months later, Ethan stood at a podium in front of 200 people at a fundraiser for Lisa Chen's nonprofit supporting single parents. Vivian had asked him to speak, to share his story, to put a human face on the statistics about poverty and custody battles and systemic barriers. He was nervous. Public speaking wasn't natural for him, but he thought about all the parents out there struggling like he'd struggled, feeling invisible, like he'd felt invisible, and he knew his story might give them hope. A year ago, he began, his voice steady despite his nerves, I was a janitor working 60 hours a week to keep my daughter fed and housed. I was facing a custody battle I couldn't afford to fight. I was drowning, and I didn't think anyone would notice or care if I went under. He told them about Brooke's offer, about the $50,000 to give up his daughter, told them about Vivian appearing like an answer to a prayer he'd been too tired to pray, told them about Grant Maddox and the legal battle, about the media attack and the doubt and the fear, told them about choosing to accept help instead of drowning in pride. I'm not special, he said to the silent room. I'm not exceptional. I'm just a dad who loved his daughter enough to fight for her and was lucky enough to find people who believed I deserved a chance. But luck shouldn't be the determining factor in whether families stay together. Resources shouldn't determine who gets to keep their children. We can do better. We must do better. Organizations like this one are doing the work, connecting struggling parents with legal help and financial resources and the support systems they need. I'm here tonight because someone did that for me. Now it's my turn to do it for others. The room erupted in applause. People stood. Ethan saw tears on faces, recognition in eyes, the understanding that his story was their story, that poverty didn't discriminate, that any of them could find themselves in his shoes. After the event, a young father approached him, nervous and hopeful. Mr. Reed, I'm in the middle of a custody battle right now. I work 2 jobs, but my ex-wife's lawyer says I'm unstable because I can't afford a better apartment. Hearing your story tonight gave me hope. Can I ask you something? Of course. Does it really get better, or were you just lucky? Ethan thought about the question carefully. Both. I was lucky that Vivian Sterling noticed me, that Grant Maddox took my case, that things worked out. But I also fought. I showed up every day for my daughter. I accepted help when it was offered. I didn't give up even when giving up seemed easier. So yes, it gets better. But you have to believe you deserve better. You have to fight for it, and you have to let people help you. The young father's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Ethan gave him Lisa Chen's contact information, watched him walk away with purpose in his step, and felt the circle complete itself. He'd been helped. Now he was helping. The cycle continued. That night, he came home to his apartment, not the one with water stains and broken heat, but a nice two-bedroom in a good neighborhood that he'd been able to afford after his promotion. Sophie was with Brooke this week, so the place was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like home. He made himself dinner, real food that he cooked with care, sat at his table and reviewed documents for tomorrow's meeting, lived the ordinary life of a working professional, unremarkable except for the fact that a year ago it had seemed impossible. His phone buzzed, text from Sophie. "Good night, Daddy. I love you. See you Friday." He texted back hearts and kisses, then sat back in his chair and looked around his life. At the career he'd built, the stability he'd achieved, the future he'd created. At the evidence that hard work and integrity and the willingness to accept help could transform everything. Ethan Reed had been a janitor, had been invisible, had been written off by society as someone who didn't matter. But he'd mattered all along. He'd always mattered. He just needed someone to see it. And now, finally, he saw it too. The story could have ended there, with Ethan comfortable and successful and grateful. But life wasn't about endpoints. It was about continuation, about growth, about using what you'd learned to make the world slightly better. So Ethan joined Lisa Chen's nonprofit board, started mentoring other single parents facing custody battles, used his platform at Sterling Industries to advocate for hiring practices that valued competence over credentials, that gave chances to people who'd been overlooked. He and Brooke continued co-parenting successfully, their relationship never warm but consistently respectful, both of them putting Sophie first. Derek faded into irrelevance, his bankruptcy and bitterness his own problem to solve. Vivian remained a mentor and eventually a genuine friend, someone Ethan could talk to about the challenges of leadership and success, someone who understood the strange journey from invisibility to visibility. And Sophie grew up knowing she was loved by both parents, knowing her father had fought for her, knowing that worth wasn't measured by money or status, but by character and presence and love. Years later, when Sophie was applying to colleges and writing essays about influential people in her life, she wrote about her father, about the dad who'd worked as a janitor and never complained, who'd fought to keep her when it would have been easier to give up, who'd shown her that dignity belonged to everyone and that accepting help wasn't weakness, but wisdom. Ethan cried when he read it, tears of pride and gratitude and wonder that this was his life, that this was his daughter, that somehow he'd done something right. He'd been a janitor in work boots standing in a law office feeling like nothing. Now he was a father, a leader, a person who mattered, and that more than any job title or salary or success was everything.